you have to fail multiple times to find the right way. But once you find that right flow, and you're gonna be more successful.
Resilience is kind of understanding that like bad things will happen and that like you can turn those into opportunities to grow and become a stronger person.
When I was young, I was one of the only women in climbing. I was the kid at the gym climbing with all the older dudes. I think for me it was sort of like a proving ground.
I've had those struggles too, that people have been upset that there's been a black person in their gym. And I'm resilient because I don't let it stop me.
Adversity teaches you to fail properly. And if you're not willing to accept failure, then you're never going to learn to grow.
Bro, whatever you can throw at me, like, you're not going to take me away from what I want to do. You can't stop me.
Whether you're alpine climbing or cragging after work, Gnarly Nutrition is here to help you push your possible.
Travel doesn't have to be this super exotic international thing. It can really be out of your own backyard. The high desert is so three-dimensional and it's so big that there is no way you could ever see everything here. The orange and brown and yellow is just so endless. Whether it's something I've done before or something brand new, there's so much to explore just right here.
So yeah, we've been testing out the new catch and hold system from the TruBlue IQ Plus. And with the IQ Plus, you know, you're just able to stop there, rest, shake out, try to figure out the moves, and yeah, really excited to have this new device in our gym. It's going to just really help us to continue growing the sport.
Since 1966, we have viewed walls not as obstacles, but as opportunities. From the big walls of Yosemite to the high peaks of the Himalaya, we were searching for a personal kind of freedom. In this pursuit, we found a community, strengthened by different stories, experiences, and perspectives. This community has shown us that the only way forward is together.
welcome to the USA Climbing 2023 National Team Trials presented by YETI. We are in Austin, Texas, where the best climbers in the country have gathered to compete for a spot on the Boulder and Lead National Team. USA Climbing is excited to be at the beautiful, brand new Mesa Rim Climbing Center in Austin, Texas. If you're in the area, you should come check it out. I'm Megan Martin here with three-time Canadian National Bouldering Champion, Miss Allison Best. Thank you so much for being here with me.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super stoked to be here for this exciting and really important event.
Yes, this is a very, very important event. There is so much at stake here today because all of these athletes are trying to get on the national team. It's very important with Paris 2024 coming up. We have a new format. It's a combined event. Both boulder and lead disciplines are combined. So the top 5 women here and later on the top 5 men tomorrow will be trying to make that national team. Now there are a few faces you will not be seeing. That are the 3 climbers that have been pre-selected for the team already. Natalia Grossman, Brooke Rabitou, and Colin Duffy are already on the team. So they'll be joined by the 5 that we crown here during this week. So very, very exciting. They're all trying to make the team to be able to compete in those World Cups so that they can hopefully make it to the Olympics in 2024. So this format today, we are in bouldering semifinals. It's a little bit of a different format that we've seen before. The scoring's a little different, so let's go ahead and walk through that really quick. The women are going to have 4 boulder problems. They have 5 minutes on each boulder problem. Still 20 women that we'll see competing. The scoring system, you're going to see these new placards. There's a 5, a 10, and a top. The 5 is the low zone, 10 is the high zone, and every top is worth 25 points, so that's a total of 100 points in the round. So they're going to have to fight for every single point. And what do you think of this new scoring system?
I mean, it's really exciting to see a new format. This is pretty different than what we've had in the past. And as we saw with the men in their qualification round yesterday, every point counts. So although the difference between 5 and 10 might not seem very much, that's really can give you an extra edge for when we get to the lead round later today.
Exactly, and we're adding those scores together from bouldering to lead, so it is very important for every single point. So it's about time for the women to start. So exciting to watch them fight tooth and nail for every point out there. We're getting a little quick look at some of those boulders you're going to see, and you know the women's qualifying round was really difficult, so I'm expecting nothing less in the semifinal round because that is historically the hardest round. So excited to watch the women get started with Zoe Bitters out there already brushing the holds. Allison, we've both been competitors in the past. Coming out with a brush in hand is pretty normal.
It is normal, and it's an interesting place to be first out. There's something nice about it, actually, to be it's sort of a low-pressure situation. You can only go up from here. She came in 20th yesterday, and so she's out first. And it's sort of a nice, a refreshing mindset to be in, to be the first one out. Freshest holds, freshest mindset. And so I'm excited to see Zoe is really strong. I'm excited to see what she is capable of doing here, especially with the lowest pressure of anybody in this round.
I totally agree. You hit the nail on the head. Coming out first, I always felt like it was the best because, one, everybody's excited with every move that you make. But on top of that, there isn't that same pressure. Like, the day starts over, which is amazing. So what you did yesterday doesn't matter. And you just have to go through the round, try to figure out what you need to do to get through it. And then also you get to watch everybody after, which is nice. You don't have to, sit in ISO the whole time. So Zoe getting a good start here, almost on that 5. That swing, a little difficult to hold. Also, we were looking at that boulder earlier. That right pinch is quite terrible.
Yeah, and it's always interesting to see what the route setters are going to do first. Sometimes they try to almost take advantage of the nerves a little bit and put you on a more technical slab or something where you have to be really calm, and sometimes they really try to hit you in the face with something powerful like this boulder and make sure you're ready for what's to come.
If I'm being honest, it's actually a while since I've seen them come straight out to an overhanging problem. Actually, even just thinking back to nationals, both the semis round and the finals round started on a vertical or slab angled wall. So the fact that they're putting them right into a steep climb is kind of fun and mixing it up a little bit.
Yeah, the wall angles here at Mesa Rim are really cool, but there is not a lot of low angle wall terrain, especially on this wall that they've chosen to put all the competition boulders on. So we saw with the men's round in qualification yesterday, they were getting creative with making the more slightly overhung or vertical walls into a slab, which we will see later with the women as well. But yeah, they don't have a lot of slab terrain, so I think we're going to see a lot more gymnastics, creative overhang boulders, and some cool volume climbing as well.
Yeah, Zoe just taking another second to really brush that hold. I have noticed, too, a lot of the holds here, and also with the humidity, actually, because we were climbing yesterday a bit, and the humidity here is pretty intense, so brushing is very necessary. And they did choose to use a lot of white holds, which I feel like sometimes you can forget to brush because you're not noticing the chalk cake up as much, because it kind of blends in. Oh, so close. Getting really close there. Again, like we were talking about earlier, every point counts. Before, you were just worried about zones and tops, but now the fact that you can gain the 5 points and the 10 points, it really matters. Something to note, too, is every time they fall, they do lose a 0.1 deduction, so when she hits the 5, it's going to be 4 point something at this point of the round because she didn't get to the 5 on her first try.
Yeah, and it does become really interesting because like you said, it is a combined discipline, so bouldering and lead are smushed together. And different from the last combined format at the last Olympics, every discipline is not in its own little bubble. Before, it was all that mattered was your ranking within one discipline, and that is different now. So the bouldering round is worth 100 points, the lead round is worth 100 points, and that ends up being a score out of 200 total. So it matters less what your fellow competitors are doing and what ranking you actually come in the bouldering round, and what can end up mattering a lot more is getting those extra zones and getting those extra 5 points, getting those extra 10 points, and setting yourself up better for that lead round.
Oh, she's so close every time. And if you were following along with the qualifiers over the last couple of days, if you were looking at the scoring, you probably saw how, for example, the men's scoring was kind of on the lower side, because coming out of the bouldering round, you know, the top scorer was in the 64-point realm, and then it quickly dropped down. So then the athletes were having to make up for a lot of those points in lead, but then it was kind of a low-scoring lead route comparatively to the women's round, which we had multiple tops on the lead route, so their scores were a bit higher. I do kind of like the number system itself. I think it will be easier for people to follow, like who know nothing about climbing. You're not worried about tops, high zone, low zone. Like, those are there, but you can just look at the overall scores by number, which is, I think, a little less confusing for those who don't live in the land of tops and zones.
Yeah, for sure. It's a lot easier to follow just because, they are a more simple number system for sure.
Isis Rothbork stepping out for her first attempt at boulder number 1. She was at Nationals earlier this year. She competed in all 3 disciplines, actually, and I believe she's competing in all 3 disciplines here now. We don't see that as often with the athletes these days, since the combined is now just with boulder and lead. But it is cool that some athletes still do like to do all 3 disciplines. I mean, if you love all 3 disciplines, I think you should totally do it.
Yeah, she's coming up to this big jump here. It looks it's a little bit hard to hold that body tension. A lot of times with that move is a bit of a compression move. Neither of those holds are very in-cut, so you really have to squeeze between both hands to make sure to stay on the wall. And the closer holds are together in that case, the harder it is to hold it. So that is a really tough, really powerful move to hit these athletes with right out of the gate.
And you see she's kind of taking tape off of her fingers right now. This is a brand new gym, which means all the holds are fresh. So not just the holds they're climbing on during the competition, but all the holds that they're on in ISO. So skin is a huge factor over these next few days, and I know it's something that they've been struggling with a little bit, so a lot of the athletes are trying to conserve their skin as much as possible by putting tape on before they start bleeding. But clearly, a move like this, more friction is going to be very necessary, especially on those really bad pinches.
Yeah, and these blue flat hold volumes are more textured than they look. They're sort of notoriously some of the nastiest skin claiming holds that are available to our route setters. And if you are slipping off of it, like you are a lot of times on this move, you're losing a lot of skin on every attempt. And a lot of times, like you said, athletes will try to conserve their skin by what I like to call pre-taping before they come out, even if they're not bleeding. But then sometimes you turn around and this is the first boulder, and
like, nope.
you don't get the advantage of being able to, like I said, climb a techie slab and have tape on your skin and have it be okay. You really need as much friction between your skin and the volumes as possible on this boulder.
And I think it's fair to say that a lot of them probably assumed they might be having a boulder that wasn't on the overhang first, because they started in that area just to the left during qualifiers, and it was more of a slab. Oh, that looked a little closer. This move proving to be quite difficult.
Yeah, and this boulder is a really good test of if these athletes are warm. I think a lot of people are curious what isolation is like, what it's like behind that big YETI banner there. A lot of times the terrain is small. There's a lot of people in isolation all trying to warm up at once, and they can only give them so much space because obviously the athletes are not allowed to see these boulders beforehand. But it really does test your tactics for warming up, how much you can warm up off the wall, how much you can warm up on the wall, and it is a huge challenge as part of competition bouldering, is being able to be warm and ready as soon as you come out. And sometimes you get the luxury of a lower angle boulder to give you a little bit of an extra finger, hand, big muscle warm up, and sometimes you don't get that luxury, and I think we're seeing that here today.
Definitely, I think you're so right about that. And especially this movement, it requires so much snap and so much body awareness and like making sure your body is awake to react to what's happening in order to make sure you make it through that move. And I think it's just proving to be a little more difficult than maybe they expected when they came out here. I mean, honestly, it's one of the more powerful moves I've seen in a while on a boulder. Nice close-up of that flat hold, the number 5 placard there, the first place where the women can actually score points, which we have yet to see women score any points so far in this round. Ooh, that was very close, though. The other thing is, it's the first boulder. They still have 3 more boulders to climb.
And what will be interesting is that some women love power boulders and some of these women don't. And for the women that don't, and the women that struggle more with powerful climbs, it'll be really important for them to maintain a positive mindset and rely on the fact that hopefully they can see and remember from qualification that the angle is getting less steep as they move to the right, and be able to keep their head in it for the less overhanging, more slabby climbs that might suit them a little bit better.
And I think that's where experience really comes into play, right? To be able to like separate yourself from that moment while you're trying to figure out what you're supposed to do on the boulder, and remember, okay, so the angle at the very end of the wall is definitely lower angle. It's likely that there isn't going to be overhang the entire time. Do I need to conserve energy? Can I give it one more go? I feel like those questions, even though they sound simple, you only have 5 minutes to climb, you're trying to send a boulder, so you really have to have that experience in that realm to be able to do those thousands of things at once, really.
For sure, and it really helps to be able to look back and remember times when you felt like maybe you're falling behind in a round, and then the slab is really hard and not that many people top it, and that's your strong suit, and all of a sudden you're right back in there.
It's not over till it's over. Mira Capacchione taking a quick look at women's number 1, while Zoe Bitters is looking at women's number 2, our first climber that we'll see on the second boulder. And again, another steep boulder, so back-to-back steep boulders, which will likely tire them out.
Here goes Mira.
Very close.
And people who joined us for the national championships this year will remember Mira had sort of a standout performance at that event. Did a really good job in finals, and it was really exciting to see. Mira's pretty young. She's definitely an up-and-comer, and I'm excited to see what she does here today. I think she's one of the athletes that will actually enjoy being hit with that powerful boulder right out of the gates.
Power is definitely in her wheelhouse. Although I do think for Zoe, too, generally I would think of her more as powerful. I do feel like that first boulder, that second move is just really, really hard. Mira's very close, though, already looking like she's making a lot of progress. Also, you're noticing she's trying to figure out really how much she should kind of go for it, right? She doesn't want to go too hard and create too much of a swing. You're kind of having to figure out how to dial it back, but not dial it back too much. So it's kind of like a guessing game there.
And Megan, for Zoe here, when route setters add volumes into a steep section like this, it's about as three-dimensional as bouldering rounds get, and it can be a little bit confusing when you're climbing on them. Hard to know
where to go,
which hand to go with, how to go up. You sort of get turned around.
Nice. Mira trying to throw that foot.
I think that's going to be really important for this move on the first boulder, for Mira and for all the other athletes, is timing, being able to kick that foot back on the wall and hit that foothold on the point of that volume, I think is what's going to keep people on the wall.
I like that Zoe was trying to jump here. I wasn't necessarily reading it so much as a jump, but it seemed like kind of a good idea. She looked kind of close last time.
Yeah, you can see the indecision there a little bit from Zoe. Like I said, when those volumes are protruding and you're sort of looking back over your head, it's really hard to know what to do. Just totally
You're like, wait a second, where am I? Wait, was there a hold around the corner? Was there not? I can't remember.
Hard to see. You can see her not being able to see that black swoopy hold and the volume at the same time.
Let's see if Mira figures out how to throw that foot this time. Oh, so close. That's how she went with the right foot. Not a bad idea. Some good opposition. Zoe trying to come around. See, I think this might be the better way, personally.
There, here.
Close. It is a little confusing.
And what folks at home might not be able to see yet is there is a small screw-on, so just a tiny handhold inside of that big black dish for Zoe on the second boulder. So when she goes up right hand there, she is holding an additional hold on top of that big black volume.
Yeah. Nice little close
There's actually
up there.
two. That's the second one.
Yeah, there's one on the inside as well, but at least there was yesterday. I guess I didn't check to see if it was still there today. Sometimes they take it off because they did already change one of the boulders this morning. I definitely walked over there, but I didn't look as closely as I meant to.
Mira going a little bit static here, being able to keep that foot on the start foot.
Really good use of her height. She's 5'9", and it's going to work, so that's going to give her points, which first points we're seeing on the board. Excited for this move. She's going to have to do this dynamic move and kind of flip and catch that white hold underneath in the undercling.
Zoe Bitter's making progress in the background behind Mira, too.
Nice.
This is the first time we've seen her up here. It would be great for her to get that at least 10-point zone. But she's really got to keep it together and, like I said, make good decisions.
She's going to get the 10, which, remember, won't be a full 10 because of the falls she had, but also looking like she's going to get into the top. Let's see if she's able to make it happen. Climbing as smart as she can here. She knows she does not have enough time to start over, so every decision is really important if she's going to get into the top. We'll need to get two hands with control in order to get a top, and she's gonna do it. Awesome job from Zoe Bitter. She'll be really happy with that. Great way to fight through that entire 5 minutes.
And like I said, really showing off her power and her strength at the top. I think we saw the route setters yesterday maybe going left hand into the more swoopy part of that top hold. You can see the edge there behind our next athlete, Sienna Kopp's head. But that was really great use of her power and her shoulder strength there. But yeah, like I said, we have Sienna Kopp up next from Salt Lake City. She trains a lot at the USA Climbing National Training Center in Salt Lake City. And I think she's just really psyched to be here. She's had an elbow injury and sort of a bad luck string of events for her. So I think she's really excited to feel like she's healthy again.
Totally, yeah. Nationals was very hard for her because she really hadn't recovered fully yet from that elbow injury that happened in Salt Lake in May, was that? Yeah, May. So coming into a comp with more time under her belt to actually be able to be fully training must feel amazing. Though I will say, Cece is the type of person who can still, even when she's kind of dealing with a lot, stay positive and kind of go for it, which we saw at Nationals. It was nice to see her attitude. Isis getting her first, or an early attempt on women's number 2. Reading it pretty nicely so far. Oh, Cece almost with the foot stab. I'm not gonna lie, the brushes are making me a little nervous. I feel like they're a little close.
I know, and a lot of times it's the athletes that put them down.
Yeah.
So that all the volunteers and judges make sure to pull them out back towards them, but then as you can see, CC just throw the brush down there. Sometimes they throw them a little close to the wall.
Yeah, just because there's some possibilities of swinging out sometimes makes me nervous, but Isis back up on women's number 2. See if she can figure it out this time.
And I really think we're going to see a lot of the women this morning doing the intro of this second boulder in very different ways. Everybody's got different heights, different strengths, different levels of flexibility, and I think that's really going to show on this boulder.
Isis figuring it out.
I think that right hand, it's tempting to go to the volume that's stacked on top of that 5-zone volume, but Isis did a good job of grabbing it a little bit lower, where I think it is actually a more positive in-cut hold.
I believe so too. And the way you can kind of wrap the corner makes it a little easier to pull yourself up. The minute she went to that other volume, she was like, nope, don't like it. Really got to set that heel.
And I mean, one thing that is really challenging about a round like this, where you have 2 boulders that are really powerful right off the gates, is, you know, Isis got about halfway up that boulder, and now it's a really interesting decision for her how long to stand on the mats and rest before getting back on, because obviously, ideally, if she got up above that volume into the 10 zone and then fell, she would want to have another chance, but it's always really hard to know how much rest your body needs.
So
close from Cece. Same thing for Cece. I mean, she's not doing that many moves because it is just the second move that is quite difficult on this boulder, but it takes a lot more out of you than you think sometimes, and so taking that extra 30 seconds of rest might make the difference, but it always is a difficult decision between one more attempt or a little bit longer rest.
Cece back on. Let's see if she can figure out this jump. Oh, all right. I like that. Doing it a little different. I'm not sure if that will end up panning out or not, but at least she did get control of the 5. So for that alone, it's worth it. Isis back through to that wrap with the right hand. Setting a toe hook. It's always interesting to see who prefers a toe versus a heel. You'll notice it because it'll be the person's first choice, and then if it doesn't work, they go to the other one. Because sometimes toes are better in certain situations and heels are better in others. I personally am a heel hooker. If I can avoid toe hooking, I do it at all costs.
And I typically prefer toe hooks, so we'll really have differing opinions there. And I do wonder, Isis there going left hand for that 10 zone and not using that small yellow crimp on the top of the volume that Zoe used, and I wonder if that's possibly an aversion to crimps from Isis, or if that was an intentional beta decision there. But
I almost wonder if she nasty. We were looking at it earlier. We're like, oh, that looks really gross. She might have kind of forgotten it was there too. I mean, it is yellow, but I mean, it doesn't stand out that much. And you know, moments of panic sometimes. I mean, your goal is to always stay calm and see everything, but it's also easy to all of a sudden forget where the holds are if you get a little panicked and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm here, I can't fall. You have to like calm those nerves down.
And hopefully as she does this section more and more, she'll have less hesitation on beta and on what to do, and we can see that here with her getting back up to that section more quickly this time. But that was a short amount of rest for Isis, and it was a good effort from her to get back up to that section.
And 3 more women are out. So we're going to see Zoe on that third boulder, Helen Stevens coming out for number 1, and Mira Capicchioni going to start on women's number 2. Number 2, a boulder I feel like would suit Mira really well as long as she can read everything right. I could imagine her making pretty quick work of this boulder, actually.
Yeah, and Mira's quite good at using her time well and conserving those attempts like I was talking about before, and you can see her taking her time and making sure to really look at all of those holds and try to make a plan before she gets on the wall.
Yeah, even though she's 17, she still is quite smart when it comes to strategy. You see her score there, that 4.6 from the first boulder. Remember, you're taking 0.1 away for every fall. Zoe Bitter is setting up for this jump. Really good first effort.
And our first look at women's number 3.
Yeah, definitely an exciting boulder. Well, not the only coordination, but probably the most amount of coordination, as it's like arm and leg coordination. Later we'll see another boulder that has some coordination, but more just upper body. Having to propel your body out left, catch that little screw-on that you can't see from this angle. There's a blue little screw-on that yellow hold. and then stab your foot out. Mira quickly into the middle section of women's number 2, just trying to calmly figure out what she needs to do and trying not to waste any attempts or energy.
And that was a really good save, I think, from her there, being able to come back and match that black hold. You can see her fighting in her face expressions there, but like I said, you know, she really took her time to figure out a plan and look at all the holds, but a lot of times with climbs like this that are this three-dimensional, that plan goes out the window as soon as you pull on, and things feel different, and the movement feels different than you were expecting.
Nice use of the toe hook there to get over. Kind of the best options are either the toe hook and reach over, or the way Isis did it, just kind of swinging up with the arms. I feel like actually might expend less energy, but not as obvious to figure out in your earlier attempts. It kind of looked like Mira was just like, what am I supposed to do?
It is, I mean, it is frustrating when you make a plan and have an idea and you read the boulder one way and that doesn't feel good when you pull onto the wall, and it's hard to stay in it and try to stay calm and figure out what a better option might be.
Good save by Zoe Bitters, just establishing on this start.
We did see the route setters yesterday potentially trying to go slow and see if that was possible, and so I am interested to see if any of the women this morning will try that and try to avoid the jump and do it in maybe a slightly different fashion.
I would assume at some point someone will try it. Oh, off camera, we have Zoe catching on women's number 3. There she is. Really good job there figuring out. Now this part gets extremely technical. That volume she's standing on is pretty small, pretty slippery. And oh, these holds, have you seen these footholds before? This is the first time I'm seeing them. They kind of have like a little nub on them. Just has to figure out how she can be stable to get into the top. Fighting. Looks like she's going to do it. Nice job by Zoe Bitters. Really coming through in this round. The first boulder, a little tricky, but absolutely crushed that second one and has a lot of time left even still for
boulders like 3 are really interesting because you have that big explosive dyno at the start, and then then you got to really calm it down and make sure you're taking your time and going really slow and moving along those bad footholds really cautiously. And so that is a really great job from Zoe, making sure to find that balance and go from that powerful explosiveness to a really calm, calculated approach at the end.
Yeah, it was nice too how she didn't try to force anything. She just kind of let herself find that body position calmly. Mira's still trying to figure out this middle section. Not really sure what to do there, and also at this point probably expending quite a bit of energy, hopefully not too much skin. I do think these holds are mildly more friendly.
And people do, people ask often how much information these athletes will have gotten from people around them, and Mira was climbing earlier on boulder number 1 directly next to Zoe as she topped it, so I wouldn't be surprised if Mira knew that there was a top.
Oh yeah.
Obviously you're not looking and necessarily paying attention to the people around you, but based on the crowd's reactions and the proximity of these boulders, I would assume that Mira has an idea that this boulder does have a top. And like I said, your mindset when you're competing is super important, and so getting that information sort of just happens, but it's really important to keep a good head on your shoulders and not let that get to you and let you get flustered.
Totally. You have to stay calm and just worry about yourself and what you're doing on the boulders. If you get stuck worrying about other people, it's hard to focus on what you need to do. Our first look at Carrie Scott for women's number 1. This round has been really interesting. I really want to see a top on women's number 1. I feel like that would be amazing.
I'm still quite confident that we will.
I am too. I mean, we're just getting into the round. We have so many people to come. Lots of familiar faces here. Kyra Condi, Chloe Koskoy to come later. Kylie Cullen, Quinn Mason, Annie Sanders, the reigning national champion in bouldering. So really stacked field for the women today as Isis takes her first attempt on women's number 3. It's pretty good. First go, kind of feeling it out. These kind of moves you definitely want to get a feel for what you're doing. Obviously, you always step up to a boulder hoping that the first try works out, but these coordination moves every time you try them, I feel like you learn something new. And if your first attempt's pretty good, it's a good sign that you should be able to figure out what you need to do there. Isis definitely taking a lot of tries. Now a second to rest, which I think is a really good idea after expending so much energy on women's number 2.
You know, a first move jump in particular is super testing of that. How many goes to give and how under rest. We have Cece up high here on women's number 2.
Almost looked like she was about to try to go right hand straight to the 10, but
she is
situating.
She is also avoiding that crimp. I think this is the situation that Zoe went straight left hand into that small yellow crimp, and we have now seen 2 athletes, Isis and Cece, not wanting to do that.
Isis sticking that jump on women's number 3, now just having to calm it down to get through this technical section, really sinking into the heels there to make sure she can find all the balance points into the 10. But still, this last part's a little tricky, trying to find how to balance and trust your feet on this little nub hold that also has some of that slippery texture from the dual texture hold there.
You can see what's really going to be important for the ladies on this move is getting their hips over that foothold. You can see her hips are still skewed a little bit to the left, and she's trying to use anything she can to pull herself a little bit more towards that finish hold to get the right balance point.
And that's what we saw Zoe do so well here. She was able to kind of relax and find how she needed to readjust her body position with her hips in order to get over on that right side a bit more. Taking a moment on the pads, really good idea. Focus on the breathing, reflect on what just happened. Still plenty of time to get this boulder done as CC is back up, and she was facing out there. A little different start to this boulder. So one thing I remember from when Zoe was on this with her heel hook going to the crimp, she was heeling on top of this black hold, and a lot of the women have been trying to stay in the scoop, but it doesn't give them the right leverage to pull into the little nasty crimp that nobody really wants to grab.
And as an athlete, you're always looking for little clues and little hints of what to do, and I think that that yellow screw on, or that yellow hold on top of the black volume, is a good indication that the setters want you to put your foot there. And Zoe did a really good job of reading that and making sure that that is where her heel was before she went up, and I think that made a big difference for her.
Totally. It just gives you a little more leverage to pull your hips up a little higher and be more stable, because to go to a hold that small, you cannot go with any momentum. It needs to be as static as possible, because not only is there not a lot of surface area to grab, but you have to just be so efficient in order to grab it. And then on top of that, it's very small, so it's very painful and hard to hold. Isis nicely back up. See one of those learn moves with that coordination.
We'll see if she's done the learning at the finish move here.
Yeah, we're not so concerned about the bottom, more so the top at this point.
And I really do think that different athletes' heights are going to come into play here. I think the shorter athletes will have an easier time actually matching this finish hold. It'll just be easier for them, like I said, to get their hips over their feet and have their hands directly above them. I think the taller athletes will be able to figure it out, but I do think we will see them spending more time here and struggling a little bit more, like we see with Isis here.
Exactly. Oh, so close, but just can't find that position. Again, it kind of looked like she was trying to force the position. Cece comes off as well. Carrie into the 10. Does she have enough time? She's going to try, but really nicely done.
You know, it's interesting. Carrie spends a lot of time training for and climbing outside on real rock, and I think that really paid off on this boulder. I think that was a really powerful movements and a lot about contact strength, which is tested a lot. Not necessarily more, but it is something that is tested a lot climbing outside. And so I think Carrie doing both and competing and climbing outdoors really paid off for her there.
Totally. I love how she kind of looked back at the clock really quick before she did that coordination flip move. Helen Gillette getting her first look at women's number 1, trying to take it all in. Carrie was kind of on the wall for a bit. She might have even seen that she got a little higher, so some motivation there. It is funny. because you can see the other people climbing, you're never like really paying attention. You're just kind of like every now and then when you're resting slightly in your periphery, you can kind of see what's going on, but still like you're trying to solve your own puzzle in front of you. So it doesn't really benefit anyone to like actually just sit and watch somebody on another boulder.
Yeah, and it is a really delicate balance of trying to, you know, like you said, pay attention to yourself, figure out how to do things in your own way, but then also not let the interference of the crowd or of somebody else doing something next to you get in your head and prevent you from focusing on yourself and what you're doing.
Helen Stevens making quick work so far of this opening section on women's number 2, reading it really nicely. We've seen it done a few different ways, which is really cool and very common when you put volumes on a wall, but really cruising this section, confident with every move, just gonna have to figure out how to heel hook. Yep, there she goes, sees that yellow. Really good route reading here. Into the 10.
We saw Zoe use her knee on this volume. I think that's going to be a trend.
There we go. Which, ouch, when you're in shorts, but, you know.
Gotta do what you gotta do.
When in competition, you don't even think about these things. Struggling to get that foot up. She is a little bit taller, so that's where maybe being shorter, too, is a little easier to bring that foot up. That's a lot of leg to kind of fit into that small box, hence wanting to use the knee. First look at women's number 4. This will be the last boulder for Zoe Bitters. And then she'll rest up for lead later on today.
And so far, Zoe has set herself up really well for the lead round. That first boulder is proving to be difficult, so we probably will see less tops on that boulder. And then she does have 2 tops on the other 2 boulders, so I'm sure she would love to make it a third here. Is bouldering her preferred discipline?
I believe so.
I'm not sure, but
she's a very good sport climber too. She did great at nationals. She didn't make it to finals, but she came into semis really high, and she ended up. Oh, I take that back. She missed semis by 1 spot. She did top one of the routes though. She had a little mishap on the other route. I think that's what happened, if my memory serves me correct. But she is a very good sport climber as well. And well, what's interesting about this competition too is you had to qualify to get into this competition, meaning you had to do well enough at nationals in both disciplines. So we're seeing people that have good results in both disciplines competing against each other. And as far as the entire field went, we only had like 30-something athletes in each gender. So it's kind of a smaller field, but a field where a lot of people are good at a lot of the same things, so it makes it highly competitive.
Totally. However, for athletes that do prefer one discipline or another, it does make your preferred discipline a lot more stressful. Because
stressful.
If you don't have a good round in what you're good at, then you have to rely on your weakness to get you through to the next round, which is something that is really challenging to do. And not impossible, but it puts a lot more pressure on whatever side of things, bouldering or lead, is your favorite.
That's so true. And it's tricky too because bouldering has always been a discipline where kind of anything can happen. You just never know. There's so many variables. Maybe you just didn't read something right in 5 minutes and you could have done that boulder, but you didn't. And then the rest of the boulders weren't really your style. And all of a sudden, even though you're really good at bouldering, you have a very low scoring round. Mira setting up to get into the 10 here. Ooh, fighting.
And Mira is one of our taller athletes, so we'll see if that comes into play here, like I said, for this finish move. She will have a harder time, I think, getting under this hold, and it will rely a lot more on her using her strength instead of her balance to get into this position.
And flexibility here. Nicely done. I was going to say she looked like she kept wanting to kick that foot up. Probably the better method if you are on the taller side, because otherwise it is really hard to sink underneath that scoop finish hold with that foot out right. Like, you can't really find that balance position. So being able to stem and use that blue hold was very, very smart. And she really honestly needed to do that boulder to walk away with some higher points in this round.
Yeah, really excellent creativity there from Mira. And yeah, like you said, that was clutch.
That was a buzzer beater. Olivia Ma stepping up for women's number 1 as Carrie Scott brushes women's number 2. Again, a lot of the women are going to brush within the first 30 seconds. You want the holds to be as fresh as possible for you. We are in that crazier part of the round where we have everybody on boulders. Also, when you're brushing it, it gives you a chance to kind of make sure you see every hold. Also, with the brush touching holds, you can kind of feel through the brush maybe the angle's a bit better, or like how deep or shallow the hold is if you don't already recognize the hold.
And we have Sienna Kopp here up on women's number 3. I was going to say, and now nobody will believe me, but I was going to say before she even pulled onto this boulder, if you were going to design a boulder that was perfect for Sienna.
Yeah, this is that boulder. And I mean, she just flashed it, so that makes perfect sense. Unfortunately, we didn't get that beginning part on camera. Maybe we'll get a replay. That would be awesome. But she committed wholeheartedly to the jump, and it definitely paid off. And she was able to get herself into that technical part where I feel like, honestly, both parts of this boulder is just so comfortable for her. She's always been really good at slab and technical stuff, and her coordination is pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, a leg-based coordination jump into a techie slab top out is, I mean, I'm sure she turned around that boulder and just
she's like, hey, this is my boulder. they sent me my own boulder.
This
Thanks,
is exactly
guys.
what I asked for.
Yeah. How'd you know? Christmas came early. Isa's kind of struggling to figure out how to get through this bottom section. You do that opening with a toe hook or a heel hook, but mainly you got to get your hips high enough to get to that next hold, as Carrie Scott trying to suss out women's number 2. Points on the board, which is great, especially in this new format. The points matter so much. Going with the heel hook this time, still not able to find that right body position. I saw when Zoe pulled on earlier, she did the quickest of taps there in order to start, just because that position, you don't want to let your hips sag too much. Carrie looking smooth here. I'm assuming she will see this heel. Oh, she doesn't even need it. This is definitely a boulder that would suit her well, kind of more rock climbing-esque with all the heel hooks squeezing and toe hooks, and then these holds won't feel so terrible to her.
Yeah, and I'm sure Carrie actually was excited to turn around and see that nasty crimp. That's really one of her favorite holds.
Yeah, right? Everyone has their favorite.
This finish move, though, is tricky. It's really committing. You really have to commit to a beta, and we saw Zoe get her heel just like Carrie is on this 10-point hold, but that is a high heel, and it is, once you put it up there, as we just saw, you are really locked into that beta, and you got to make it work. Or you're going to be on the mats pretty quickly, as we just saw.
And a very big height difference there. Carrie's 5'8", Zoe's 5'3", so that high heel for Zoe would likely feel better. I see why Carrie tried to do the toe hook. The only problem is it gets you so elongated that even after you come into the next hold, you're going to have to unwind, and that would be just too much to control. So good move to try to get into the heel, but it's definitely not going to be the most comfortable position for her.
Yeah, and it's going to be tough for Carrie to decide when to get back on that boulder, because there is only a minute left on the clock.
I would personally try it at least one more time, but definitely not with too much time left. She's also probably having to deal with some skin issues.
And that is going to be a factor on that second boulder, is that that's a long boulder. There's a lot of moves. Although there's not maybe that many holds, when you have a 3-dimensional volume like that, you end up doing a lot of movements to get up and over and around. And so making sure that you are using your time well and making good decisions in that respect is, I think, going to be very crucial for the women on that boulder.
I totally agree. In fact, most of the women should likely wear their chalk bag on that boulder. I feel like because you have all those heel hooks and toe hooks and squeezing going on, there is opportunity to possibly like chalk up, because the other thing is it's very humid in here. It's really hard to not let your hands sweat too much, so might be a good tactic.
And it is interesting what athletes are used to that. Kara is from Colorado, which is quite dry, so for somebody like her and for those of us that are coming from Salt Lake, the humidity is something we're not really used to and our skin's not used to.
Yeah.
So it is interesting to see how different athletes are handling that, and I think we're going to see some people with some really bad skin by the time this day is over.
Yep. Another look at Sienna Kopp's finish on women's number 3. You see she had to bend her arms as much as possible and kind of pinch the lip of that hold in order to get underneath it enough. Another method, and she's another one of the taller athletes. So cool to see a taller athlete do it that way. Morgan Taji coming out on women's number 1, brushing the holds, getting ready. Another one of the younger athletes at just 19 years old. Seasoned youth competitor.
For sure. I mean, we have all these athletes that are hovering around or below 18. You know, and it seems like they're young and spry, but really for most of them, they've been competing since they were 9 or 10, and they actually have a lot of experience and are well-seasoned competitors and are really ready to be competing at this stage of an event.
Totally. I mean, the fact that you can compete when you're 15 at these events makes it so you could be in the elite for many years before you're even 21. So though they're younger, they are definitely seasoned. And for most of them, they do the youth and the elite circuit as long as they can, right? So they're kind of doing double.
Yeah, well, and for some of our older athletes, I say older in air quotes, you can't see it.
Like mid-20s as older?
Mid, maybe pushing into late 20s as older.
Maybe.
But for those athletes, they've really seen this sport change a lot more from when they were really young, like 10 or 11. It was a lot less jumping, a lot less coordination, a lot less three-dimensional. So I would assume Kyra Condi is one of our oldest athletes here actually today.
Yeah, Kyra, Carrie.
Yeah, so for athletes like that, they've really watched the sport change a lot. And for some of the younger athletes who are almost 10 years younger than them, they haven't had that. So they've been doing these more jumpy coordination moves their whole lives. So I think we're going to see...
Literally, like youth C-Girl divisionals with a double clutch boulder. You know, that was common.
Exactly. And I think, you see that becoming an advantage in some ways. And it really comes into play whether experience is gonna be one thing for these older athletes, or whether having done a coordination dyno since you were 10 is gonna be more important. And we have Mira being our first athlete to stick this hold and move off of that 5-point volume.
And choosing to do that section in more of a static way. You can do it more dynamic as well, but good idea for her, making use of her height to get there in a more static way.
And that is a really heartbreaking, powerful finish move on women's number 4, and it is the 4th boulder, so these athletes are going to be tired by the time they get there.
Helen trying to figure out how to get through this crimpy technical section here. Into the little press on the cheetah hold. It's kind of nice that it's just a press. Cheetah, another hold company that's quite textured and can really take off skin. Just kind of falling out, not keeping her hips in there. Still has plenty of time to give it a couple more goes if she needs to. The look on her face, though, tells me that she's not really enjoying that upper section. Obviously, everyone has different likes, as Helen Gillette is trying to figure out how she can get a top here on women's number 2. Going to go with that heel hook. She's a little taller, but looks more comfortable in that heel hook than Carrie did earlier. Just needs to figure out how to get her body in the right position to match that tiny crimp, and she's going to make it happen. I was kind of worried with her toe on that small little crimp. I didn't know if that was going to do too much.
Yeah, going for that same shoulder beta, too, as Zoe Bitters. Yeah, really, it really tests that shoulder strength, and both Zoe and Helen have the strength to answer for that.
Exactly. Mira Capacchione getting her probably last attempt on this boulder, especially if she can get to where she was last time. Has to get set up for that really powerful finishing move, but first has to get there. Make sure she does everything the same, and so far it looks like she is replicating her beta perfectly. Oh, she did almost lose it there that other time. Making that move more static is definitely smart, but you have to then hold the powerful part at the end when you're trying to match. Just 15 seconds left for Morgan Taji to get her last attempt, trying to get the 5 here. Almost looks like she's going to hand heel. Good idea. That right hold's pretty bad, though. But we're going to quickly go to a commercial break, and we will be back with more of the women's semifinal round in bouldering.
You have to fail multiple times to find the right way. But once you find that right flow, and you're gonna be more successful.
Resilience is kind of understanding that like bad things will happen and that like you can turn those into opportunities to grow and become a stronger person.
When I was young, I was one of the only women in climbing. I was the kid at the gym climbing with all the older dudes. I think for me it was sort of like a proving ground.
I've had those struggles too, that people have been upset that there's been a black person in their gym. And I'm resilient because I don't let it stop me.
Adversity teaches you to fail properly. And if you're not willing to accept failure, then you're never going to learn to grow.
Bro, whatever you could throw at me, like, you're not going to take me away from what I want to do. You can't stop me.
And we are back to the women's semifinal round of the bouldering at the 2023 National Team Trials as Carrie Scott is making quick work of women's number 3, which seems to be proving to be one of the easier boulders in the round here. The women kind of having to figure out how to do that opening jump, but a lot of them looking very comfortable through this technical section. Even if they don't look comfortable, they're able to generally figure it out. Carrie kind of jumping the gun there on getting into the right side of the boulder as Chloe Koskoy is high up on women's number 1. We only saw Carrie up there earlier, but she ran out of time to even really give it a fair effort. But Chloe getting up there quickly with plenty of time to get this boulder done. And this would be big for her because bouldering is definitely her better discipline, though she is good at lead as well. Second in bouldering nationals, made many a semifinal at World Cups in bouldering, and didn't really have the best round of bouldering in qualifiers.
Yeah, if I was going to put an athlete on top of this boulder, Chloe Koskoy would be up there on the list for me. And this might be a little bit earlier in the round than people are expecting to see her, just with, like you said, her amazing track record of good comps. But with this new format, these athletes, it's sort of a gamble about which discipline is going to be more important. And she had an okay bouldering round for her. I think she placed 4th in the qualifying round. But the lead route proved to be a little bit easy, and she had sort of an unfortunate mistake a little bit low, so this is why she is a little bit lower down in the ranking than you would maybe expect to see her.
And again, 4th, good, but looking at her points, it might be different. I think her points were a little less scoring because it was a hard round in general. Most people only had 1 top in the round for the women. There were people with 3 at the top, but it was still a low scoring round, so even though a 4th place, points-wise, not going into the lead route with as many points as she probably would have liked. CC making very smart decisions here, taking the time to kind of rest there before setting up for this last move on women's number 4. This move is very committing, very powerful. It is a good hold you're going to, but to get enough power and momentum to do that cross and hit it perfectly is hard to do. Olivia Ma just trying to figure out what she wants to do. Hopefully she ends up seeing that heel hook on the yellow because it does set you up. I think if you're a little taller, you can pull in on the lower part of the heel a bit better, but she is on the smaller side, so that yellow hold on top of the black hold will be necessary in order to pull her hips in enough.
I think that was an interesting example. We saw her in the background, and she's done, actually. I think that's a really smart decision. We saw her in the background already getting to the finish move of that boulder, and I think she had her heel in that dish, and it just didn't have enough power to make it work a second time.
Chloe back up on women's number 1. She is pressed for time a little bit, but has plenty of time, just needs to make smart decisions as she works her way through probably the most powerful boulder of the round. It doesn't really let up either. You have a lot of bad hands, a lot of bad feet. She can just come in, but her hips fell away a bit, and her shoulders, she wasn't able to engage enough to kind of bring that foot up.
I mean, Chloe showing a really textbook example of good time management on that boulder. She had 2 really good goes, and she had about the amount of time that she was going to need in order to top that boulder. So although she didn't find a top there, that was really, really good strategy from Chloe Koskoy, and that was the best attempt we've seen yet on that boulder problem.
And she was up there multiple times. I'm honestly surprised that Carrie was struggling to get into the 10 there on women's number 3. I wouldn't have expected that from her. I would have figured being so tall, having to figure out the last move would have been kind of tricky, but generally she's so good on crimp. She's quite technical, but it looked like she couldn't find that right body position to keep her hips in enough to get to that blocked, nasty crimp that she probably would have liked if she was able to grab it.
And time will tell if we'll have athletes towards the end of this round that will enjoy those crimps a little bit better than she did.
Everybody getting their brushing on. Always smart. Brushing, reading the boulders, making sure you see every hold. Luckily the walls are gray and there's colored holds on the wall. The worst is when you have holds that blend in. I know for myself, I've definitely missed holds in comps.
Me too.
Because it's like black hold on black wall and you're like, what? I never saw that.
What's really cool about Morgan we see here on women's number 2 is Morgan actually works as a route setter as her full-time job at the Salt Lake Bouldering Project. And so it's really cool to see her. She's usually quite thoughtful and creative about how to climb boulders, and she's had a lot of experience learning about how setting works behind the scenes, and I think that has really benefited her competition climbing a lot because she's able to see the things that you probably wouldn't be able to see unless you're the person putting the holds on the wall yourself.
Totally. I feel like in the past couple of years you've seen that in her improvement in, placement in competitions and just being able to figure out boulders quickly. Helen trying to get into that position also up to that point very quick, just over 3 minutes left in the round, so plenty of time to figure that out again.
My reflex is that high heel is maybe actually not the way to do that finish, especially for those taller athletes. I think maybe
shorter.
Cece had a better idea of sort of just jumping and trying to generate as best as possible, but once again, that's a hard section to read because that heel makes sense, but we'll see.
You just saw how close the left side of Helen Gillette's body was to get to that 10 crimp. Wow, really goes for it on the finish, actually. That was pretty risky, but panned out for her. Another top there.
Another really good round.
Yeah, she's climbed great in this round. She won bouldering at Youth National Championships this past year, like last summer. So definitely bouldering being her stronger suit.
And you can see it on her face there, that smile. I think it's really cool when you have athletes like Helen that are just showing really great progress and seeing it in their results, and it's really encouraging and really exciting when you can feel yourself improving and you have a day on the boulders that is able to show that. And so I think she looks like she's really excited to be here and to be having a good round.
Yeah, happy that she's able to articulate her climbing the way she knows she can, because that doesn't always happen in comps. That's always the goal, but it doesn't always happen. So when it does, you really have to celebrate those moments. Morgan back up on women's number 2 as Kate Hardy tries to figure out this opening section of women's number 1. We've seen this move done a couple ways, but every time we've seen it done, that's the first time we've seen it done, actually just committing to the jump and then getting the foot on. Really strong for Kate Hardy there. That was very powerful. Now she kind of for a second wanted to try to go into the undercling, but
correct me if I'm wrong, Megan, she doesn't love jumps.
She doesn't love them. Jumps and coordination, because this is more of just like an upper body coordination move, but she knows that that's what she's supposed to do, but did want to try those other options subtly prior, which I think is a good idea, because in that hold, or on that hold she was on, she does have the ability to, because it's a good hold from that position.
And you and I were wondering, standing under the boulder this morning, if anybody was going to try that, and so we have our answer.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that undercling is really bad. I'm not sure it'll work that way, but we'll have to see. Morgan trying to figure out how she wants to do this section. That looks good. Gonna go with the heel hook first. Big, powerful bump.
Let's see if she finds that screw on with her heel, or if she decides to commit to the low heel in the dish.
I don't think. Maybe now. Nice. But see, again, she's about 5'4", so keeping that heel low is okay for the crimp, but then she's a little spread out to get into that Gaston on the yellow hold.
It's always, we can see Morgan giving a last-ditch effort here, and it's always a little disheartening, I guess, just watching, because I think it would be really, really challenging for her to get up to that 10 zone. She already had the 5. in the amount of time that she had left. But you never know. Sometimes somebody pulls onto the wall with 20 seconds left, and I'm like, why are you bothering?
You're like, what are you doing? But
and they do it.
And it depends on the boulder, too, because on that angle and with how many moves it had, not necessarily ideal. Another look at Helen Gillette's exciting top on women's number 3. She was so happy with that, big smiles as she went back to ISO for women's number 4. And our first look at Nakaya Sanders getting ready to get on women's number 1.
You know, Nakaya is always a fan favorite.
I was about to say, always really fun to watch because she has such a unique style.
And she's also very expressive. So when she's having a good day and having a moment, you can check it out actually on the USA Climbing Instagram page. There's an awesome reel of her from qualifiers getting really excited topping a boulder. She's always super fun to watch, super strong, and really, like you said, does everything in her own way.
She's very flexible, so she definitely uses that skill a lot, and she puts herself in these positions where you're like, no way, and then she gets out of it, and it's insane. A little misreading there from Chloe, but early on in her attempt, so I'm sure she'll be able to figure that out. I'm not gonna jinx anybody, actually.
I'm
gonna just not assume anything, and I'm just gonna
let it happen.
Let her climb. Although was it yesterday or the day before? I said something that was like a jinx in the positive. Like whatever I said, then the person did the move, so it was like better.
Yeah.
You're always worried about that as a commentator. Accidentally jinxing them off the wall.
Olivia Ma looking out to that foothold for a second.
I saw that. She's like, can I use that? Oh, really close. She's got the right idea.
Sometimes that is an interesting thing that athletes who are a little bit more adverse to jump moves do, is they sort of look for alternatives, when in reality this jump of this slab boulder is proving to not be so difficult, and so athletes even that don't love jumps would probably be better off in this circumstance just committing to what they know you're supposed to do.
Yeah. Nakaya getting really close to holding that swing there as Chloe's trying to figure out this middle section. Looks like she's probably going to set the heel there. Just has to do that bump. Now it'll just, she is tall enough that I think, she's going out right though. Interesting. Oh, she wants to go straight there, which not a bad idea, just bypassing that little nasty crimp hold because she is a bit taller. She kind of has the ability to do that.
Zoe Bitter's tried this.
Drop knee. Oh, that hurts me, but it's, Okay, well,
I mean, it's interesting that foot lead position I actually think is pretty solid in order to match that second to last yellow hold, but
then you're stuck.
Then putting your hand where your foot is seems like a tall order.
Carrie figuring out how to get up into that number 5 on women's number 4. Getting high on a lot of boulders in this round, but yet to have a top, so a top here would be really helpful, but at least she is getting points on every boulder. If you're not getting a top, at least gotta get as many points as possible. Nice stick by Olivia Ma. Looks like a ballerina there. Now she is only 5'2", so this section should feel a little more comfortable for her. She's able to get really low and close to the wall. And then for this finishing move, it shouldn't feel as awkward and out of balance because she should be able to get under it nicely. And as you see, she's already doing that. And she's going to walk away with a top there. Really nicely done.
And you see her doing a really good job of being slow and patient at the top, especially for athletes that struggle a little bit more with the jump. I think they put a lot more pressure and patience into the top because they don't want to have to do that first move again.
Which is a good way to go about things. You really never want to have to start the boulder over anyway, so being really efficient at the top and making sure you top so you don't have to do another try is always a good idea. Now, I am surprised I haven't really seen Nakaya try anything else on this jump in terms of like foot beta. I feel like, earlier we saw Morgan try a high heel to go up, and I feel like that's something that could maybe work for Nakaya, so we'll have to see if she does something else as Chloe tries to get back up to the top of this boulder. I also hope she tries to do something other than the drop knee at the top. Just seems like a tricky position to be able to match from.
And Chloe won't know it but she really wants this top. I think this is one of the more toppable boulders. We've seen 2 tops of this boulder.
Oh my gosh. You know, talk about people who get themselves in interesting positions sometimes. Chloe is one of those people that she finds body positions that you would maybe not see for yourself, and oh man, so you can't get closer to topping there.
No, and I mean, she really wanted to switch feet and not have that heel hook in place, but that, I mean...
I'm just surprised she never tried the right heel. Like, because she's really good at heel hooking. Another quick look of Olivia Moss' send of women's number 3, making it look quite casual.
And Chloe Pascoe, like we said, is one of the U.S.'s stronger bouldering athletes, and so she's really looking to set herself up well for this lead round, and yeah, I think she, rightfully so, will be disappointed about not quite getting that top.
She's definitely going to be disappointed about that.
Here we have Quinn Mason.
Beat me to it.
Too slow.
So Quinn is, we've been talking about a lot of the athletes that bouldering is their strong suit. Quinn is a very good boulderer, but I will say that lead is her strong suit. And she's been the national champion in lead before. She was second this last nationals. She's a phenomenal lead climber, so not as much pressure to make sure she gets all the points here. As
totally. It's way less pressure.
Yeah, way less pressure. Kate Hardy working her way through women's number 2, making a lot of good decisions thus far.
You know, if you're a strong lead climber, you can sort of rely on, man, if I have a bad bouldering round, I can probably have a good chance of making up ground in lead, and you don't necessarily have that luxury if lead is not your preferred discipline.
Exactly. Kate just trying to figure out which feet she wants to use. Going to try to avoid this crimp as well, it looks like, but now backtracking. Let's see if she finds the yellow. She's wrapped around the yellow screw-on, so it's keeping her from seeing that as a heel hook option.
You know, this boulder is interesting to me, that so many athletes are really not wanting to go left hand to that crimp. I think when they have their left hand wrapped on that black hold on the side of the volume, logically they want to be going right hand to the 10 hold because it's facing that correct direction, and both of those holds are fairly good. But it is interesting that we are seeing a lot of athletes just not grab the hold that's in front of their face.
Totally. It is a nasty hold, though, so I'm not going to fault them too hard for that. If you are just joining us, this is the semifinals round in bouldering of the 2023 National Team Trials for USA Climbing. And if you're wondering why there are those 5 and 10 point placards on the wall, that's because these are the way the women are getting the points. Every boulder is worth 25 points, which means with 4 boulders, that's 100 points. And later on, their lead route will be worth a total of 100 points as well. Those scores are added together. So we have the 5 low zone and the 10 high zone so that they can get points there as well. The original way they did it a while back, they were using 3 and 6, but not really enough points to be compared to the lead, so they switched it to the 5 and 10, making it a little more comparable.
We have a lot of resting happening right now. I think people are just, like I said, trying to use their time well. There's a lot of powerful moves in this round. So
and they have to climb a lead route later.
Absolutely.
And then if they make finals, they have to do it all over again.
Exactly.
Nicely done by Morgan Taji. Lots of patience there.
Another athlete that I think would have really liked that boulder and is definitely would have known as soon as she turned around that that was in her wheelhouse. So good on her for making that happen and getting the top.
Yeah, that was great. Kate back up, hopefully with a different plan here. She was up there for a really long time, kind of just trying to figure out which way she wanted to go. I like at a point that she decided to drop was a good idea, because otherwise it would have been a lot of energy wasted.
For sure, and I think she's looking at that crimp now at least.
Getting close.
Really fighting to make that left heel, I think, feel good. We've talked about it before, but a lot of athletes are putting their heel where her hand is on the left side on that little yellow hold.
Quick look at the leaderboard there. Helen Gillette currently in first place, followed by Zoe Bitters. And take a look at these scores to the right. Yes, there's a whole number and a decimal. The decimal, remember, every time someone falls, they lose 0.1. So right now, the athletes who have topped get those 25 or almost 25 full points. That's why their scores are so much higher, in the 59.6 for Helen and 53.9 for Zoe. And everyone else is basically just trying to catch up right now. So you really want to go for those tops. So tops are still king because you want to get those 25 points.
And you do see that red line at the bottom there, which is the cutoff for finals. A lot of people might be used to 6 athletes making it to bouldering finals, but it's always been 8 for lead, and in the combined format, it will be 8 today as well.
Yes, 8 people, which is nice, right? 6 is a very small number. Going for 8 people,
that's almost half.
Right? 8 feels a lot better, but on top of that, you do have to do leads, so there is that.
And you know, we were talking earlier today about how every point counts, and we'll have Chloe Koskoy about to get on the boulder that we see Morgan topping right now.
Yep.
And because she did get 10 points on the first boulder, that will give her a little bit more
10
wiggling room.
on the first and the second.
Right, from not topping the second boulder like we've seen some people do. So, you know, obviously, as Megan said, tops are still king, but you do
it's a little more forgiving.
Get a little bit of forgiveness if you are getting the high zone at least on every boulder.
Yeah, so if you're not going to top, at least getting the high zone
absolutely
will somewhat save you. Nakaya Sanders just trying to figure out how she wants to start this boulder for women's number 2. We've seen it started a bunch of different ways. I think that she will really like this boulder. It'll definitely play up to a lot of her strengths with her flexibility and power. She's very comfortable in positions where she needs to use her lower body.
And I do think we'll see some funky things from Nakaya, like we did with Chloe as well on this block.
Chloe quickly up to the middle section on women's number 3. Being a little taller, we'll just have to see how she wants to get through this boulder. She kind of going about it the same way Carrie was, leading with that right foot. You kind of want to make sure you don't go too far with the feet, as Paloma Slowick is quickly through the opening, looking really good too. She has so much time on the clock, very fresh here. So if she can just figure out what she wants to do beta-wise, would be a good attempt, or a good look at a top there. But
10 points.
Figure it out that time. But yeah, 10 points, really impressive.
And early.
Yeah, good for the energy saving, though. When you're still a teenager, you do have more energy, but
that is the truth.
There we go. Chloe gets into the 10, still leading with that foot. Ooh, little slip there.
Well, see, I can see Chloe being one to step back onto that blue hold above her head like we saw Mira do earlier in this round. But it is...
Oh, my gosh. Oh, my gosh. Wow. That was way harder.
And you can see Chloe sort of having a moment. It does really hurt when you're at the top of a boulder like that and can't quite find the match, especially when the same thing just happened to her on the second boulder. So it's really going to be important for Chloe to keep her head in it and to know and understand that she can do the boulder and that she just has to get back up there again.
Root setters taking a second to clean women's number 2. That's Marshall getting some blood off of that hold there. Definitely want to make sure everything is as hygienic as possible during the round. This won't cut into Nakaya's time. We'll have her probably come out in a second to finish off her actual time. So this is a technical there. Chloe back up. Oh, even the way she's doing that move is so much harder of a body position to get the 10 with that right foot out. She's going to go about the same, ooh, but slower. Nicely done. Really good adjustment there. Such a minor adjustment.
Yeah,
and she needed that.
She really,
she needed that top.
I was getting stressed for her.
I know. I mean, in reality, she needs to walk away with as many points as she can from this bouldering round.
We have Paloma back up at the 10 zone here. She's doing a really, really excellent job of executing the bottom of this boulder, which has proved to be so difficult for so many of her fellow competitors.
Yeah, it really has. And she's pretty new to the elite scene. Definitely one of those youth competitors that has been around for a while, but only 17, so only eligible for elite for a couple years. So in the elite realm, not as much experience in this competition, but as we've said before, the youth series is very competitive as well. Olivia trying to do the more dynamic way there. Just a little too much gusto on that jump. Just dial it back a tiny bit, and I think it would be possible. Probably the smarter move for her, just being only 5'2".
And Megan, speaking of blood, you said we saw the root setters cleaning that off. You can't be bleeding these athletes while you're climbing. If your skin is so thin that you are bleeding through your tips, it is up to you, the athlete, to stop the bleeding with tape before you can continue. So Nikaya, I think, had her bleeding under control, and the boulder problem was not ready to be climbed because there was blood on it, and so then she is allowed to have her time back while the root setters clean it. But if it is you that is actually bleeding, it is up to you to use your time
take care of it,
and take care of it.
Yeah, very different if it's on a hold. So we will see Nikaya in another round come out and finish her time on that boulder. So what's going to happen is right now you just saw the 3 women come out, so Nikaya will come out when it's close enough to the time she had left in her round for that boulder, and she'll, oh wait, actually not, that's not true, sorry. She's going to come out later. I don't know when they're going to send her out, but they'll send her out later.
She'll continue her round.
Exactly.
Right now, as if she had climbed the last boulder.
And then she'll come back to do number 2 later. We used to do a blood technical, which we're very glad we don't do anymore because it actually stops things for long periods of time.
I think avid USA climbing watchers will remember a nationals, I think in 2019, when almost every single athlete was bleeding and the round was hours delayed.
3 hours. No, it didn't. And actually Quinn was one of those people she would not stop bleeding. Yeah, so Quinn will be on women's number 2 now. Nikaya is going to come out for women's number 3 in the next round, which was her normal round, and she'll come back to 2 later on.
And the root setters were telling us that facing out, they did not think was the way.
Yeah, and unlikely that people will be able to successfully get through it that way. We saw Cece do it that way earlier, and I think Quinn will make it work here as well. It's probably still harder. Now, Cece wasn't as spaced out as Quinn just was.
I think Cece ended up essentially turning around as soon as she got up.
Yeah, she was like face out, then turn around right where Quinn was, but didn't use the other side of the volume. So we'll have to see if she adjusts there. Kate Hardy setting up for the jump here. Doesn't necessarily love jumps, but like Allison was saying earlier, it is one of those jumps that isn't so crazy difficult that the people who don't like to jump shouldn't be able to do it. They should be able to do it as well. Quinn facing the right way now, or not the right way, but the easier way to get through this boulder.
The inside way.
The inside way, which you always want to do things the easiest way you can. I mean, theoretically, everyone can make every boulder as difficult as they want to, but you want to make it as easy as possible.
Quinn's one of those athletes that does a good job of trying really hard at whatever decision she makes, and a lot of times that pays off and ends up working out, even if it wasn't necessarily the root setter's intended beta. But you can see here, I think she's going for the same method that we saw Chloe go with, trying to get that right hand up straight to the jug and skipping the crimp. She does have a finger issue, actually. Currently, I don't remember what hand it's on, but
yeah, she was talking about it the other day, actually. And is it her?
I actually think it's her right hand.
Yeah, I think so too. Because I remember her
no excuse to not grab that grip.
She was talking about being uncertain about something, even though it was like not even that finger that she was going to use, but she was still kind of, it's almost like a PTSD of like, I don't want to go to anything with that hand. You get kind of nervous, even though it might be just specifically one finger.
I mean, injuries are hard. Injuries are really mentally taxing when you have them, but then they also result in, I think, a lot of anxiety about being hurt and not wanting to take more time off and not wanting to make things worse. So even if the injury is on your other hand, I think bearing down really hard on a really small hold if you have a finger injury at all is scary.
Triggering.
Yeah, exactly.
I also think it's just really hard to trust yourself fully, you know? Like, I think it's hard to be like, yes, I can do that. Instead, you start to feel a little more hesitant and just nervous about the whole situation.
Now, this is interesting. A foot just on the front of the volume, trying to get the height to get to that BP volume.
Definitely keeps you a little too low. Just over a minute left. Kate struggled a bit down low getting that coordination move under control, but now that she does, she should be in a good position to get through this next part. Nicely into the wall and getting into that 10. Just needs to stay calm. Ooh, little slip there. Nice save. Gonna go with a low stem. Not sure it's the best position, but she might be able to make it work. She's definitely fighting. If she can hop up to a higher stem, she definitely does not want to do that coordination jump again, so she's trying to just figure out how to get into that top hold, but not able to make it work there. Now 30 seconds left. This number 3 is a boulder where you could jump on at 30 seconds because it's pretty quick. Quinn still trying to figure out how to get into that 10, hasn't found the beta. It's interesting that she still hasn't seen the higher heel, and she keeps going back to this. Wow, that took way more energy, but definitely worth it in this scenario. Just needs to stay calm in order to make it into that
Calm,
top.
but also very fast.
No time, 5 seconds. Oh, gonna go with the toe hook. That seems risky. Oh, not enough time for a top, but really good climbing there from Quinn Mason.
It's really stressful to be watching athletes in that scenario when they only have 10 seconds left, because you want to be telling them to go faster, but they also sometimes can't.
Yep, we'll see you back in a quick second after this commercial break.
Travel doesn't have to be this super exotic international thing. It can really be out of your own backyard. The high desert is so three-dimensional, and it's so big that there is no way you could ever see everything here. The orange and brown and yellow is just so endless. Whether it's something I've done before or something brand new, there's so much to explore just right here.
So yeah, we've been testing out the new catch and hold system from the TruBlue IQ Plus. And with the IQ Plus, you know, you're just able to stop there, rest, shake out, try to figure out the moves, and yeah, really excited to have this new device in our gym. It's going to just really help us to continue growing the sport.
Since 1966, we have viewed walls not as obstacles, but as opportunities. From the big walls of Yosemite to the high peaks of the Himalaya, we were searching for a personal kind of freedom. In this pursuit, we found a community, strengthened by different stories, experiences, and perspectives. This community has shown us that the only way forward is together.
Welcome back to the 2023 USA Climbing Team Trials presented by YETI. We are deep into the women's semifinal round in the bouldering. Later on today, we will have the lead semifinal round in this new combined format, which is what you will see at the 2024 Paris Olympics. First look at Zoe Yi on women's number 1, proving to be the most difficult boulder of the round. The only one we have yet to see a top on. We have seen some women get really close, so we're still hopeful. Got some more strong women to come, so I'm hoping somebody does that boulder. But I will say the theme of this round is power.
Absolutely. Even the less steep boulders are still have a lot of power requirement, and especially this boulder, we have seen some people doing some wonky shoulder things, as we see Nikaya doing there. But Nikaya is not one of our taller athletes. She's not necessarily super short either, I guess, but she's
smaller. She's only 5'2".
Okay, yeah. So she is one of our shorter athletes.
Just needs to figure out how she wants to come into this top hold being really precise. Oh, please do it with an inside flag. Everyone knows how I love an inside flag in the boulders. Yes, Nikaya. They're nothing special in lead because people do them all the time, but in bouldering, it's always cool. It's not seen as often, so I like to bring light to them. She is psyched. Really good round so far for Nikaya.
And Megan, you just mentioned at the beginning of this round the Olympics for the first time. This is a big stress event for a lot of these athletes, and more than that, this event will dictate their schedules for the next almost 2 years, whether or not they make the team and whether or not they are attempting to qualify for the Olympics. This is it. This is the comp that decides who will be on that team, who will be joining Brooke Rabatou, Natalia Grossman, and Colin Duffy for the men tomorrow on their journey to try to qualify for the next Olympics.
Yeah, I mean, nationals was already stressful because that was like the first stepping stone, but here, this is, like you said, it's really it. If you don't make the team here, you're not going to get enough of those opportunities to be able to go do the World Cups and get into one of those qualifying events for the Olympics. So it is a high pressure couple of days here, and it's also a new format. Most of these athletes haven't climbed in this format. A few of them have, because we saw it in Morioka. So a few of them have that experience, but most of them haven't climbed in this format. And, you know, some of them are young enough that they didn't even climb. I mean, they might have done the combined in youth with all three disciplines, but they didn't do it on the elite side. So lots of firsts here.
And Megan, we haven't seen a top of this women's 2 boulder in a while. Since Helen Gillett topped it, she's seen there at the top of our leaderboard, followed closely by Zoe Bitters, who also got to the top of this boulder. That is what is keeping those two at the top of the leaderboard, followed by Chloe Koskoy, Sienna Kopp, Mira Capacchione, Olivia Ma, Morgan Tajki, and Nikaya Sanders.
And you notice, too, in that scoring that even though Chloe has fewer tops, she is close to both Zoe and Helen's scores just because she's gotten so many of the high zones in this round. So,
and I'm really excited to bring you the lead round later today and to talk more about how that closeness will come into play on the lead route later this morning.
Yeah, it's all very interesting. Lots of numbers.
And lots of newness. I think all of these athletes, all of the officials, all of the route setters are really adjusting to this new format and learning how that comes into play.
Another look here at Chloe's top of women's number 3. The first time we're seeing a top here, and that will be big for her because now that means she has 2 tops, which is 2 25s or really a 24 point something due to however many falls she had. But that boosts her to the top of the leaderboard now.
Megan, that's a really good example of the other quote-unquote toppable boulder at the moment was women's number 2, and Chloe did not manage to get to the top of that, and that is sort of a great example of what I was talking about earlier about that mental toughness and staying in it and knowing that, you know, Chloe wasn't maybe having the round of her life up until that last boulder, and it was in the last minute of the round that she turned it around for herself and now is at the top of the leaderboard. So that was really proving that mental fortitude and staying in it and knowing what you're capable of when that really pays off. And Chloe showed it to us.
And you totally hit the nail on the head there, but especially the fact that the other 2 boulders were also very toppable for her style of climbing. So not only does she know that she can still top boulders in the round, but she knows that she has missed topping boulders, and not letting that get in her head is really hard to do. Because it's one thing to be like, oh, I didn't top, but it's not really for me. Nicely done here by Kate Hardy. Really easily into that cross. She was able to sit up on her hips really well. Another athlete who wasn't having necessarily the best round, but little did she know number 4 was going to suit her really well, so nice climbing there.
And Megan, this makes it really interesting when we do have that women's number 1, as you see Ella Fisher struggling on that really hard second move there. That has not had a top yet, but on all the other boulders we have now seen tops, and we've seen tops by different people, which is
great.
Really exciting.
That's what you want to see. You want to see every boulder topped by multiple people. Maybe have one person do all 4, but you don't really want multiples of that. So we're still waiting for that top on number 1, but I think eventually we will get it. Quinn Mason taking a second to brush off the start of women's number 1. Lots of the women having to figure out how they want to do this first move. She went to that a little slower.
You know, for some of the shorter athletes for that first move, they do a really good job of committing 100% into that jump. And if you're a little bit taller like Quinn, it's hard to decide whether or not to leave that right hand. And I think sometimes that holds you back because you don't necessarily jump as hard for the hold you're going for, because you really want the security of having the other hand on as well.
Yeah, exactly. There is always security in having at least another point on the wall. When you have to go all points off for a second, it's kind of stressful. Ella Fisher taking a second as Quinn is through that coordination section. Now We've seen a lot of the taller women kind of match feet here and go straight out with their right foot, which is what she's going to do too. It does make this move a little more difficult. Standing just with your right foot on that gray volume and getting the 10 puts you in a lower position to get into the 10, so you just have to work a little harder, but she does it really nicely.
And we haven't actually seen anybody other than Mira step back onto that high blue hold, which is surprising. I am
surprised by that as well.
I thought we would see that more.
It looked really nice. It looked very comfortable.
Sometimes it's interesting. Sometimes you have athletes like Mira come out and do a particular beta, and they make it look so easy that it seems, well.
I think. But maybe she'll come down.
But yeah, I mean, you have athletes like Mira where they have some sort of beta, like putting their foot up high like that, and they make it look so easy that it seems obvious from a spectating point of view, but really maybe it's
not
that
as
athlete's
intuitive.
strength.
Yeah, I think Quinn just jumped the gun there by doing the cross first instead of like getting the foot up and then crossing it. And she was trying to go back to that crimp and do that, but unfortunately she kind of lost her balance. But let's see if she can make a adjustment there and fix it. Ella Fisher taking another brush to this white pinch. She didn't have the best bouldering round in qualifications, but she had a stellar lead round, so putting her high up in the running order as those points get combined. Quinn quickly back up. Again, this move is just a little harder when you have that right foot out. So interesting though, I think because you know you can reach it when you're tall, you're like, oh, why wouldn't I move my foot out there? But the hip position changes and it just makes it a little more difficult, which is actually going to cost her. But again, Quinn, another very, very strong lead climber, so not as dicey for her. She still has a lot that she can do in the lead round. So being in that top 5 is still very within reach. Really top 8 to get into the finals first.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just sort of the opposite of what we've been talking about. Even if bouldering isn't your strong suit, you still want to be pushing to be in those top few and to set yourself up well to give some wiggle room, I would say, for the lead round.
It is actually interesting because we are seeing the bouldering, the stronger boulderers are at the moment in the top. We'll see if it stays that way, but a lot of times you do see a lead person in there, but we're not really seeing that so much. Kate is very good at lead, and she's in 6th currently, so the top 5 are pretty boulder-centric athletes.
And what's going to be really interesting is the difference in point values between our top athletes. So obviously pushing into the, like you said, top 5 ranking is important, but at the end of the day, the ranking isn't super crucial. So what will become more important is, you want to be first, but ideally you would want to be in first position, beating the next person by 20 points.
And actually, that being said, it's still a lower scoring round right now with the top person, Chloe Koskler, having 68.9. So here's another look at that leaderboard. Helen Gillette right behind her with 64.3. Zoe Bitters, 53.9. Sienna Kopp, 44.4. Mira Capacchione, 43.9. Kate Hardy, 43.4. And Olivia Ma, 39.5. And Morgan Taji, 34.5. So really low scoring round. And the qualifying round for the women, I think the highest score was around like 79.5, but then we had multiple 100 points from the lead. So as long as the lead route is, equally lower scoring, it puts it in a pretty even place. Although we do have, still, I think 4 more climbers to come out. So we'll see if we can push into that 70, 75, 80, possibly 100. Maybe we'll get someone who does all, or not 100, but maybe that would be all flashes, which is a little more difficult. Yeah, getting 100 in the boulder is a lot more difficult, actually, in terms of the fact that you lose points per fall.
Absolutely. And like you said, we have 3 athletes still coming out. And a lot of those athletes are our strong boulderers, one of them being Annie Sanders, our current bouldering national champion, Kylie Cullen, who has been consistently making semifinals at the World Cups in the past few years, and obviously Kyra Condi, who was an Olympian in Tokyo 2020 and who has made IFSC World Cup finals. And so for those girls, if they were to, let's say, top all 4 boulders, they would be ahead of the current leader by 30 points, which
is a lot.
Is a lot of points. So still a lot to come, still a lot to play for, and time will tell how it's all going to play out. And who will be set up the best for the next round.
And I think it's important to note, we're seeing Nakia go through the round. She's on her 4th boulder, but remember, she still has more attempts on that 2nd boulder. So we're going to see her again after she finishes her round. So her points aren't 100% accurate at the moment. Zoe trying to figure out what she wants to do here on women's number 2. So many moves, so you really want to make sure you know what you're doing for every part of the boulder so you don't waste any time or energy, because you really can't do that. Just gonna campus through.
And Megan, is that why we have a hold on women's number 1, is for that time slot for Nakia to climb again?
That would be my guess. I guess I don't know for sure, but I think that would make the most sense here.
I would assume that's what this break is for, and then we'll give it one more 5-minute, or I guess 1 minute and 13-second time slot, and then we will have Adrian Akiko coming out on women's number 1.
Yeah. It's nice that we can make all of those adjustments when there is a technical. Paloma Slowick trying to figure out, ooh, interesting little reverse wrap and an inside flag. Maybe if she's stuck with a regular position with the hand pinching that volume.
We've talked about it a little bit already, but moves like that have a finish move where you're pressing into the finish hold and you're standing right over a foot always result in really interesting and different beta between athletes who have different strengths and different body types.
What I really love about women's number 3 is it's like an order of operations boulder, in the sense that if you get ahead in any way with your body, you end up making it a bit more difficult. Nakia quickly back on women's number 4. Shoulder flexibility for days. Just trying to kind of hop into that pink hold. She kind of is a little spread out there.
And Megan, what I hope for Nakia is that, hold that thought while we see hopefully a match from Paloma.
So close.
But for Nakia, what's interesting now is that she has that 2nd boulder still to play for, and unlike her fellow competitors, she will be more tired than some other people were, and that is a steep and involved boulder. So hopefully she thought of that a little bit and
saved some energy.
Saved a little for that boulder, which, as we've said before, we know is toppable.
Paloma getting really close here with some interesting beta, but just loses it at the last second. Really great attempts from her there, and she still has one more boulder in this round as Ella Fisher checks out women's number 2 for the first time. And we have Quinn Mason on women's number 4. See if she goes with the heel hook or the toe hook to start. Gonna set a toe first. Makes you have to really drop down low here. So if you're a little taller, it's okay, but for the shorter athletes, definitely not as feasible of a movement with the toe hook. Still, I do think it is a bit more powerful than with the heel. I think with the heel, just being able to get your hips higher really, really helps.
And for Quinn, she also, as we just saw with Paloma, struggled at the top of women's number 3, not quite being able to match that finish hold. So the more amount of points that she can get on this boulder, which is always true, but especially for Quinn in this circumstance, she's really trying to push as far as she can ahead before the lead round. And so if she could get a top on this boulder, that would really boost her up the ranking, and I think is really important for her right now.
I totally agree. Ella Fisher quickly into this middle section. Indecisive here, which we've seen a lot. Looks like she wants to skip the crimp, so that is the best way to do so. Now she just needs to figure out how she wants to approach this finish. Almost looked like she was setting up to go dynamic. Now she's going to set the heel. I think that's a great decision.
There we go.
Nice. Then you can keep. We have not, everyone, like you were saying earlier, has gone with the press. No one's kind of gone to that lip side of that hold, which if you do in the heel, sets you up nicely to just stay there and not have to maneuver with extra movements. So really efficient, plenty of time left. That'll serve her well for the rest of the round. Nice climbing.
And like I was saying with some of the athletes earlier, and even Chloe Koskinen was up there and had that foot lead going on, and once you get the foot that high, it's hard to be able to get all the way around to the other side of the hold. And the other 2 girls that topped that ended up doing really hard shoulder press position into the right side of that black hold. So that was, I mean, really, really wise route reading beyond her years for Ella Fisher to find the left side of that hold.
I would say, too, she's another athlete who really excels in lead, and I feel like she kind of went at it from a lead climber's perspective, and I feel like that showed. And I do think, though that boulder is so powerful, there are a lot of elements that are similar to what you would see in lead in terms of like your decision making and the body positions that you're in and when you have time to make those decisions, and I think she displayed that really well there.
Here we have Quinn Mason back up on her final boulder of the morning.
Going for that dynamic approach. I do think she could do more of the static beta. Like, she's definitely got the wingspan to make that happen. Though I do think when you come into match after that, it is a little jarring. But we'll have to see if she decides to just stick to the dynamic or maybe change it up and do the more static method. Because she's 5'8", so very, very tall with a +2. Still a plus, not a crazy plus, but I mean, that is 5'10".
Something.
That's a lot. If you can reach 5'10" and you're already standing at 5'8", I would take that.
Absolutely. Just a little bit of a misfire at the start of this boulder.
Luckily, it is her fourth boulder, so she can kind of go for it a bit more, but having to remember that they really don't have a lot of time before they're going to be climbing on the lead route. And these walls are very tall, lots of moves, so she does still have to conserve some energy.
I mean, Megan, with this new format and with the way the schedule is lined out for this event, these athletes will be doing a bouldering round this morning, followed by a lead round, and then for the ones that make finals, they'll be doing it all over again this afternoon, which is an insane demand on the body and on the mind, and for it to be such an important event. The ask of these athletes today is really, really high.
It's like Groundhog Day.
Exactly. I find sometimes when you have competitions that are this long and multiple rounds in a day, it sometimes feels like it was a different day. You show up for
100%.
ISO at night.
You're like, wait, who am I? Where am I? What's happening?
Wait, that was this morning? Oh my gosh.
It's like being a kid all over again and having no sense of time.
All right, so here we have Adrian out, as I said, on boulder number 1.
And you see no one's come out to number 2 because they're going to send, I believe they're going to send Nakaya out when it gets down to the time period that she had left when they had to go clean those holds.
We think.
I mean, it makes sense. So I feel like it's probably what's happening. Adrian Akiko taking a second to brush the holds. She is the 4th to last competitor. 3 more women coming out after her. So these holds are definitely a little grimy at this point, so really important to brush.
And she had her first World Cup experience this year at the Salt Lake World Cup in May. Well, this year. And then at the Salt Lake World Cup.
Yeah.
There's a comma in there. At the Salt Lake World Cup in May, she made her first semifinal. So that was really exciting to be there to see, and a really impressive performance for a relatively new World Cup competitor to have an event where she was able to make semifinals.
Totally. Yeah, she did the circuit the year before, but never really had as much success. She didn't do the entire circuit, but she did some of the comps, but she wasn't able to break into that semifinal. So yeah, it was really exciting because she is just newly 18, so not a lot of World Cup experience on the elite side,
but really
which
showing
is different. I do think the World Cup on the elite side is quite a different beast,
and she is showing that experience here on this super difficult first boulder. Just a little bit of a, I don't know, indecision moment. It was sort of hard to tell what happened there, but
yeah,
didn't quite make it all the way to that second hold.
Yeah, I feel like she didn't know exactly what she wanted to do there. Nakaya Sanders back out on women's 2. She has plenty of time, so lots to possibly do here. So her score could definitely change. She didn't actually have many attempts prior to the blood technical. So interesting wrap there. We haven't really seen that, but definitely working. But again, Nakaya, one of the athletes who chooses some unique body positions, really trusts her body and what her body is good at, which I always find to be really cool in athletes when they can really lean into what feels right to them.
Definitely a very incredibly instinctive athlete. She sort of just goes with the flow and does whatever feels right. And I think she just doesn't overthink it, which a lot of times pays off for her, as we can see with a little moon kick, as we call that.
Like a toe hook with the left foot whilst moon kicking with the right. She does really like to have all 4 points on if she can. Let's see if she can get into that next hold as Paloma Slowick just kind of susses women's number 3. Another look at the standings. Nakaya holding out in that 8th spot currently, with Olivia Ma in 7th, Kate Hardy in 6th, Mira Capacchione in 5th, Sienna Kopp in 4th, Zoe Bitters in 3rd, Helen Gillette in 2nd, and Chloe Cosquay at the top of our leaderboard right now with a score of 68.9. Like we said earlier, the highest scoring for the women in the qualifying round was 79.5, so this is a little lower currently. So we'll have to see if some of the other women put more points on the board. Paloma getting another attempt here.
Paloma in a similar position to Chloe Cosquay at this point in the round, where she was really at the finish hold of all the other 3 boulders, which can be really mentally draining and also physically draining. She's done essentially all of the climbing required of her on all the other 3 boulders, but doesn't necessarily have those top points to show it. So it would be really great if she could pull a top out of the bag here to finish her round off.
Adrian back up in that number 5 zone. See if she can figure out what she wants to do after this little flip move. Very dynamic flip move.
That is an awesome move.
So
highlight of the round.
minute we saw it, we were like, oh my gosh, yay, that's exciting. It's
We'll
funny
see.
when that used to be a foreign movement. Now it's like pretty obvious. Looks like she's getting in a position to top here. This would be huge. The first top of the round. One hand has 2, and Adriana Kiko starting off the round exactly how she would want to, with a top of women's number 1.
And with that, Megan, all of the boulders in this round have a top, which is making for a really exciting round. And honestly, hats off to the route setters.
Yeah.
It's hard to set a round like that, where every boulder has a top, but all by different people. And it's setting up also to be an exciting final few athletes here.
And to get to this part of the round and just to have had the last boulder be topped. So she's coming into this round in 4th place. And so taking to that time to have all the boulders topped is pretty amazing. Another look here at Adriana Kiko's top of women's number 1. Knew what to do this time. Really committed to her beta. Just one more aggressive move to the top hold. But once she had that wrap, it was easy to match it. So very nice start to her round as we get our first look at Kyra Condi on women's number 1. Definitely a boulder that I think she will enjoy. She is a powerhouse, to say the least. So as long as she reads everything right, she should be having fun on this boulder.
Absolutely, and I think she should be. I think she's quite psyched on this new format. She only did Lead World Cups last year. She was just on the lead team, and so she had a lot of good experience and learning in lead. Bouldering is definitely where I think she feels the most at home still. So she's going to be hoping to making that second move look so easy.
So easy. No surprises there.
Hoping to have a good round this morning, but I think she's also excited to feel pretty good on a rope right now too.
Totally. I think it was a nice change of pace for her to just focus on lead and not be all stressed out about the Bouldering World Cups. So kind of a little break, and now she can be psyched to be back in bouldering. The cross seeming to be the harder beta, going left hand, really good adjustment. To get a top here on her first attempt would be an incredible start. See if she's going to do it. Oh, she chose not to throw up the heel, which I think puts you in a bit of a better position to be more efficient for that final move. We'll see if she makes an adjustment.
And also stable when you hit that position,
exactly.
To be in that perched, in that perched position for that last move. But hopefully that is a correction that she will make on her second attempt, because she still has 3.5 minutes left.
And a good moment to, make sure she rests long enough, because she knows exactly what she needs to do. That's the best position to be in, to know that you know what to do and you can execute the next attempt. Really going for it on one of her early tries, Ella Fisher, on that little coordination jump move on women's number 3.
And Kyra just taking her time to really look at that last move. Once again, I think probably based on the crowd's reaction, she'll have a good idea of the fact that Adrian just topped that boulder right before her, so she knows it's possible. And yeah, I think she's just making sure to do as much learning and as much observing of this boulder as she can while standing on the mats in order to make sure that she is efficient with her time and that she makes this next attempt really count.
And also rehearsing what she did the first time, because I'm sure everyone, I mean, I've had that situation, I'm sure you have too, where like you get really high on a boulder the first time and then there's some little bit of beta that you forget and all of a sudden you're in a different body position. So you really want to make sure you know exactly what you did that worked and that you replicate it on your second attempt. She is, a little slip there. I was going to say she's crushing that move.
Yeah, she really is. And I mean, if you hadn't seen the first half of this round, you would think those holds are really good, and they are quite bad.
They are quite bad, for sure.
And here we have Ella Fisher, connecting with that jump for the first time. We'll see if she can reset here and sort of slow down her pacing in order to be able to do the top of this slabby section. Those crimps are a little bit nasty. They have
a little.
They have no wiggle room or room for error, especially that 10-point zone you can see is blocked with another hold. So you really have to be accurate. You really have to be precise. Pressing into that shoulder, trying to make sure she's staying up high above her feet.
Oh, wow.
Kyra Condi with
save.
A really impressive save.
Doesn't want to do the heel, but, there we go. Little cross there. Good adjustment. She didn't really want to sit on the heel, but putting the foot up still put her in a better position. I cannot believe that slip she had. She was like, oh my God, what am I doing?
Honestly, Kyra's hands are really strong, so when she gets holds like that, even if they're small, she can do a lot from a lot of different positions. I think for her, on that last move there, the key was just to be patient and to find that position for the last move, whether it was a heel or a toe up high, and that was a really good moment of patience for Kyra, and paid off with the top there. So that was our second top of women's number 1, and we have one athlete left.
Two athletes left.
Two athletes left, Annie Sanders and Kylie Cullen, and so we'll see if they can answer those two tops with tops of their own on that first boulder.
I'm really interested to see how that's going to go. I wouldn't necessarily say that boulder is either of their specific styles, maybe Kylie a bit more, but you never know.
And that is a bummer from Ella Fisher. She did a good job of really making sure to learn on every attempt on that first move of the third boulder, getting that jump just towards the end, but couldn't quite make it work.
Replay of the save Kyra Condi had as she was topping women's number 1 with a huge smile after that. So we'll be right back after a quick commercial break with just 2 climbers to go, Annie Sanders being one of them.
Whether you're alpine climbing or cragging after work, Gnarly Nutrition is here to help you push your possible.
Welcome back to the 2023 USA Climbing Team Trials. We are in the women's semifinal round of the bouldering. Lead will be later as we see Annie Sanders quickly working her way through women's number 1. I stand corrected on what I said moments ago about being unsure about this being the style of the last 2 competitors. As she's clearly crushing this boulder, this next section should give her the least amount of... okay, I just jinxed her. That's my fault.
Yeah, you can tell her later that
I'll
that's your
tell her
fault.
later. That was my fault. I'll take that fall.
And Adrian finding that left side of the black hold, she actually tested out the shoulder move, grabbing the right side of the black hold first, like we saw some of her fellow competitors actually do that beta to finish it.
Yeah.
But then she very smartly found the left side and found the easier way to top that one out.
Really good energy saver for the rest of the round, especially because they're going to need their shoulders. So,
and Megan Annie is interesting. She is our current national bouldering champion.
And lead champion.
She's very young, though. It's her first season as an open athlete. And so I think for a lot of people watching from home, it may seem like she sort of popped out from nowhere, but she really has been one to watch for a while.
Yeah.
Having really outstanding performances at Youth World Championships. She is, I'm sure you have the notes in front of you.
Yeah, no, she is the reigning lead world champion. Oh, no, sorry, she's the reigning bouldering world champion. She was the previous lead and bouldering world champion. So in 2021, she won both disciplines, had a little slip in 2022 in lead, but was still able to win bouldering. So phenomenal athlete. Just now being eligible age-wise to compete in these events. So if you haven't seen her in these events, it's just because she's so young. Zoe Yi, another one of those athletes actually, who was also in her first year of the elite competitions, being 15 years old as well. Annie back up into that.
And it was
coordination.
It is one of the reasons why it was, it was so cool to have Youth World Championships also be in Texas this past summer, and to see athletes like Annie stand out and sort of give you a glimpse of what's to come in the open categories. And she was definitely one to watch, and she has not been disappointing.
Definitely not. There she goes, figuring out the beta. Almost losing it there, but fighting really hard. And that is one thing Annie Sanders is known for doing, is fighting. I remember watching her in nationals, in finals, just fighting her way through a boulder, and there she will start the round with a top. So now this boulder has been topped for the 3rd time after waiting for the entire round basically to see a top. So a great start to her round. So looking like we should see those point values on the top of the leaderboard increase. Another look here at Adrian Akiko's top of women's number 2. Sees the lip there, chooses to grab it, and then match, putting her in a much better position where she exerts less energy. Quick look at the save. You see she had to pull around the right side of that hold and just kind of snap onto that crimp.
Megan, it is really interesting to see Annie go right after Kyra Condi, and Kyra being one of our oldest athletes competing, and Annie being one of our
so
at
not
26,
that old.
but Annie being one of our youngest at 10 years younger.
Oh my gosh, over 10 years.
Over 10
That's
years.
Wild.
But
Doesn't seem
just
possible.
Stylistically and mentally, to watch them competing one after the other is super interesting, and I think Annie clearly has a long career ahead of her, and Kyra, I think, still too, probably.
Oh, yeah. I mean, both of them in the prime of their climbing life. Quick look at that leaderboard. The top 8 with Chloe Koskoi, Helen Gillette, Zoe Bitters, Adrian Akiko, Sienna Koff, Mira Capacchione, Kate Hardy, and Olivia Ma in that top 8 right now. Scores are likely to change a little bit as we go through, with that first boulder now being topped by the last 3 competitors, and they're still very early in their round. And now we're getting our first look at our final competitor of the morning. Kylie Cullen came into this round in the number 1 spot after a stellar bouldering round and then a stellar lead round as well.
Kylie was sort of another breakout youth star at her first season competing in open, and now she's sort of a staple on the U.S. adult team. But yeah, she was also one to watch coming up, and has really proven that she is passionate about the sport and is super talented and capable of competing internationally at that highest level.
Kylie has been very consistent since her first, I remember team trials in Memphis, which I think was 2021, I would say, something like that. It was like 2 team trials ago. That sounds about right, 2021. And she made the team, and then was doing well that first season in the World Cups, like making many semifinals, and she's never stopped doing well. She's been very consistent since that moment, which is a lot of pressure, and being so young, being able to handle that and still be really successful over these last few years has been incredible to watch. Ella Fisher in a good position to take her time to set up for this very powerful final move on women's number 4. Placing the heel. Oh, just a little low on that hold as Kyra Condi just zooms through women's number 2. See which method she chooses. Gonna go with a toe hook here, and it looks like she's gonna go for the press. Doesn't really see the outside. Makes it happen, but lots of extra energy. As you see, her body was shaking in that matched position on the final hold.
I'm not gonna lie, that is, I think, one of the more interesting boulders of the round, between the crimp on the face on that volume and people choosing not to use it, and then also the left side of the finish hold being the better side and people choosing not to use that too. That boulder really rewards good, smart decision making, both in terms of energy expenditure and also success on that boulder.
Which is something we love to see. It means really good route setting and really fun, creative problems, and challenging the athletes to, you know, read the problems, but also think outside the box and figure out what works best. Not just what does the route setter intend for me to do, but like what also works for my style of climbing and my skill set. Kylie struggling to get that foot on as she jumps. She's trying to go with the right foot. We've seen a lot of the athletes try to do that on this boulder, as Ella takes a few more seconds to figure out how to get back up to the top on women's number 4. She was already up there one time, so she wants to conserve her energy. Kylie trying to do that heel hook, which I do think could work, but it is kind of an awkward move and really puts a lot of pressure on that right hand and holding that really fat, terrible pinch. That is a thick pinch. It does have that thumb catch, but it's not great.
Yeah, I mean, the hand strength requirement for making that high heel hook work is a tall order.
Lots of contact strength.
And here we have Ella, I think, thinking about pulling on. She probably won't have too many more tries towards the top of this boulder, so I think she's tried to wind down the clock a little bit, give herself the most rest that she can, before she now begins to be working her way up towards that 5 zone and out towards the next volume. Oh, just lost it a little bit. The side of that pink hold does have dual text on it, or dual texture, which is slippery and doesn't have any friction. So if you are a little bit inaccurate with coming in with the left hand and you miss it and hit the dual text, it is unforgiving.
Kylie really needs to figure out how to get to the 5-year points on the board. Definitely something she wants to have. Oh, so close to holding that swing. It is a really aggressive swing. We've seen most of the athletes struggle with it. Honestly, other than Adrian and Kyra, Annie was able to get through it as well, but did have a couple falls on that move, or at least one fall on that move.
Now, Megan, this is putting Kylie in an interesting place. You talked about her being able to handle pressure really well, and this will be a good test of that. She's likely been sitting behind that wall there in isolation and has been able to hear the past few tops on this boulder. And it's frustrating to come out last and to be falling on the second move. She won't know that this is the same result as a lot of the athletes before her, because Adrian and Kyra and Annie all have done it before her. So it's going to put a lot of pressure on Kylie. She's going to know that, and it'll be really interesting to see how well she handles that pressure and if she can keep it together and top some of these other bowlers that she is completely capable of.
Yeah, we're going to have to just wait and see how she handles that. Now, being a seasoned competitor from the youth side to the elite side for a few years now, she should have that mental fortitude to let it go and just focus on what comes next. And a lot of these boulders in this round, I do believe, will suit her very well. So there's still a likelihood that she walks away with 3 tops and close to that 25-point range for all of those tops, like high 24 point something, I would assume. So that would still put her in a good position points-wise.
Absolutely, and it is interesting to see, because these early boulders had a very few amount of tops until the end here. Adrian and Kyra, with their tops on the first 2 boulders, have already pushed into the 4th and 5th spot in the ranking. Obviously, Adrian at the far end of your screen won't know that, but she has already set herself up really well to have a great bouldering round, and she's only halfway through.
Which is a great place to be sitting, but like you said, she won't know that. Annie Sanders trying this face-out method, which creates a crazy swing, but she's got contact strength for days and very good body control, so able to make that happen, even though I think it expends a little more energy. Doesn't matter if you can just get through it, so we'll have to see which route she chooses to go on this boulder.
If you
because there are so many ways.
Yeah, if you do face out, you end up with both hands over on that black hold, so it's a little bit more interesting to get over to the right and grab that volume where you see she's done successfully now. And what's hard to tell from your screen is it's a little bit blind. There's a volume on the right side of that. There's a volume on the volume on the volume on the right side there.
Stack.
And you can't see it. So we've seen a bunch of athletes moving their right hand up and just missing the good spot because you can't see it from the left side. So that was a good display of patience from Annie and taking her time and making sure that she's in a stable position with her other 3 limbs in order to move up this volume stack. Still displaying that patience as she figures out what to do with her feet.
She has more patience than I've seen anybody on a wall. And wow, that paying off so well there as she does that move in a way we've never seen it done before. She's very methodical and makes sure she's in a controlled position before she does a move. That's what makes her such an incredible lead climber. Sometimes it can hurt her in bouldering, but right now it's working out for her really well. Quick look at our leaderboard. You're seeing those scores, 68.9 and all these other whole numbers with a decimal. That's because each of these boulders is worth a total of 25 points. So if you do it on your first try, you get 25 points. And then with every fall, you lose 0.1. So that's why we're getting a lot of those decimals, because we're seeing the athletes have to do multiple tries and have those falls. A top from Adrian Akiko after we just saw Annie Sanders top as well. I do think there is a chance that we have a couple people top all 4 boulders. I could see that definitely happening with the way this round is going. Adrian already off to a good start with 3 tops, which means she's getting 24 point something with each top because she hasn't flashed anything, whereas Annie has a flash from number 2, which would give her that full 25. So the places you can get points are the 5 with the low zone, the 10 with the high zone, and the top is 25. And then with every time you fall, you lose 0.1, so that's why you're getting 4.8, 4.9. And if you guys are curious about the breakdown of the boulders, if you go to the USA Climbing website, go to the results, that'll take you to the scoring portal. You can click on bouldering, and it'll break down what exactly those numbers we're giving you that we're adding together mean. So basically, everything added together, it's obvious who's ahead, but if you really want to see how they did on each boulder, how many attempts it took, if you want to geek out in that way, feel free to do so.
Yeah, Megan, it's getting really exciting to see the 4th boulder with all these last girls topping the first 2 or the first 3. We have yet to see a single athlete top all 4 boulders in the qualification between the men and the women. Obviously, there's been some falls for everybody already, so nobody will get that golden perfect 100 score in the bouldering round. You do need to flash all 4 boulders without falling to get that 100. As Megan just said, you do lose 0.1 for every fall, but we have yet to see in this competition an athlete top all 4 boulders. So Adrian now has topped 3, so she's opening the door for that opportunity for herself, as well as Annie Sanders and Kyra Condi both topped the first 2 boulders. So we'll see if anybody can clinch that coveted spot, and with some of the other numbers being a lot lower, if any of these athletes does top all 4 boulders, that really sets them apart going into the lead round and really takes the pressure off of that route.
It totally does, though it's worth saying that both Kylie and Annie topped the route from qualifiers, so they have a good feeling going into the lead round anyway.
Absolutely.
So no matter how they do in the bouldering, which they're already off to an amazing start. Well, Annie's off to an amazing start. We need Kylie to get some points on the board here. But knowing that you're also really good at lead is helpful going into that other round later today.
It's interesting. For most of the women in this semifinal round, if not all of the women in the semifinal round. I don't know that there are many, again, if any, standout specialists that are only really, really good at one discipline and who really struggle in the other. I think there's maybe a couple in the men, but in the women, I think for the most part,
it's a little more even in terms of both disciplines. I agree.
We did have in the qualifiers for the men, we had a couple men do not so well in the bouldering round and then really be a standout shining star on the lead route and vice versa. But in the women, we don't have that as much. They tend to be good at both.
Just makes it harder for everybody.
Absolutely.
Kylie trying to get her first points on the board here. Getting into the 5 low zone. That's what she's approaching. There she goes. If she can stay patient on this boulder, I think it's one that she should be able to figure out. Going to go for the swinging method there. I do think this is the least taxing method, but I think it's hard to want to just hang there. I think because you know if you have more points on the wall, you're going to be in a better position. I think people don't want to let go with their feet. Kyra just trying to find that. Wow. I thought she was about to windmill off of that. Really nicely done by Kyra Condi.
But that was a really good example from Kyra about, as we were talking earlier, you got to get your hips above that foothold, and she sort of just let it happen on its own.
She's like, okay, I'm turning. Let's just turn.
Kyra, in a little bit of a different way from Nikaya earlier, is also just a really instinctual climber. She really goes with what she feels.
Yep.
She, for those of you who don't know Kyra Condi, she has a spinal fusion. 10 of her vertebrae are fused together, and so I think a lot of times she just sort of has to go with the moment and what feels right, because sometimes even the intended beta is not the easiest beta for her. So she does a really good job, as we saw on the slab, of compensating for what she can do and really going with the flow and feeling what feels right and what feels good to her.
Which is something she's worked on a lot, I'd say, in the past 5 to 6 years. It's been a huge focus in her training, because there was a time period where those style of boulders, she was just getting shut down because she was just trying to stay in what seemed to be the intended beta, even though it wasn't really working for her because of that spinal fusion. And it's been really cool to see her evolve in that way and be able to kind of change the way she approaches those kind of climbs.
Absolutely, and we see Kylie here back on women's number 2.
I like that.
Yeah, that is nice. It's always interesting to see when an athlete finds success on their first attempt and gets up high like Kylie did before, if they're going to do the same thing, if they're going to change it up, if she was climbing so intuitively that she maybe doesn't even remember what she did the first time. And it has been a number of athletes since we've seen anybody use that crimp.
Everyone's again skipping it.
Opting to go up right hand to that 10 zone, eyeing up the finish hold. We'll see if she goes for the shoulder method into the right side of that black hold, or...
Oh, little bobble there. Oh, calf cramp it looks like. You know, sometimes we talked about this earlier with warming up in the back. It's kind of hard to warm up your entire body to be ready for exactly what you're going to get out here. And sometimes, you know, maybe you didn't do an aggressive enough heel hook earlier in the day. So that's like the first one she might have done, causing a little cramp or spasm in the calf muscle, which, you know, just is kind of uncomfortable and doesn't make it easy for you to pull as hard as you want to. So... And hopefully she can just stretch it out.
Here we have an interesting circumstance of Kylie has less than a minute left on this boulder, and I'm sure she doesn't physically feel ready to go again, but she's running out of time and running out of options. So she's seen here walking towards the start holds and getting ready to give another attempt, but I'm sure she's still tired from the last one. So this will be a real test of her power endurance and her ability to recover quickly.
I will say she did look way more fluid and efficient on her last attempt, and she definitely is more confident going into this attempt because she really knows what she wants to do, whereas the first attempt she was kind of figuring it out. So not plenty of time, but she does, I think, have enough time if she can just keep moving through. Oh man, maybe, I don't really know what's going on, honestly, but she did point down to her foot again, so hopefully still other boulders for her to do. Well, the other thing is this. She did just get a lot of points, right? She didn't get any points in the first one, but she did get to the 10 here. This is a similar position that we saw with Chloe earlier. There's still 2 more boulders that she's definitely capable of topping. So even though we just have seen a lot of people do, you know, 2 boulders or 3 boulders in a row. That hasn't been the theme of the round. So she's still in a good position. It's just because we're seeing back-to-back sends, it starts to feel like, oh no, she might be in trouble, but she's actually not.
Yeah, and I'm sure it feels that way to her too. Like I said, you can sort of sense what's going on based on people coming back into isolation early before the time's over and the sounds of the crowd. So yeah, I mean, it's a really similar. We talked about at the beginning about the low pressure situation of coming out first out of isolation, and we saw that really paid off for Zoe Bitters, who's still in 5th position right now. She had a really great round in that low pressure scenario of coming out first, and contrary to that, coming out last is very stressful, and we see Kylie Cullen in that position being surrounded by people who are clearly topping all the other boulders, and it's really difficult. So it's really going to start testing Kylie's mental toughness coming into the next boulder.
I totally agree. Really nice work already on women's number 1 from Annie Sanders. Just had to figure out that opening move. Now in a really nice position. Gonna have to figure out how she wants to do the finish, since we keep seeing it done so many different ways. Doesn't like that. Gonna readjust. Annie will always readjust into whatever position she feels most confident in. I was wondering if we'd ever see anyone match it, and I'm glad we did. Another top for Annie Sanders, her 3rd top of the round, looking to come away with a 4-topping round, as Adrian Akiko is also in that position, but on her 4th boulder, has topped every other boulder before, so just trying to figure out what she wants to do on this one. In a better position now. Looks like she's, I think she was going to try to go with that static way that we've seen work for a lot of people. I do feel like the way her toe was kind of scumming put her in an awkward balance position. Maybe flipping it to a heel there would be better to kind of pull over to the right a bit more.
Yeah, we'll see how she corrects for that on her next attempt.
Plenty of time.
And she is our only athlete on the floor currently after Annie Sanders topped that 3rd boulder. Kylie is our last athlete, so boulder 1 is done and boulder 2 is also done. We are winding down here at the semifinal round of the 2023 USA Climbing Team Trials. It's a little bit intimidating sometimes being the only athlete on the floor, especially after we've had a full wall for the past couple hours.
But being an athlete that's familiar to being in a final, she has been in that situation, being the only one out there climbing. So not one where she should feel too uncomfortable, because she does have that experience. Another little explanation of our scoring here. Tops are 25 points, high zone 10 points, low zone 5 points, and a 0.1 deduction for every fall that happens. So that is where we are getting our scoring from. All of those scores from each boulder are added together. The goal is 100 points for flashing every boulder. We will not see that today, but we're hoping to get up into that 90 realm from some of these athletes if we can see a couple people top all 4 boulders would be pretty cool. That is a tongue twister.
That is a tongue twister. And Adrian is one of the ones that could pull that off. She still has a minute and a half left. She definitely has the power in her to get over to that last volume and make the finish move work. And then one thing I love about when Adrian climbs is she always has a good contingency of her family traveling with her. So if you hear cheering in the background, that's likely
her mom, dad, her sister,
her siblings. Everybody's sitting back there cheering for her. And so it's always really cool to see. There's always 3 or 4 phones pointed at her at once. You can see her sister there in the green sweater filming her at all times.
Next to her mom on the left. That's a good point. Also, you were talking about her having enough energy and power left. I mean, she's climbed so efficiently through this round, so she does have the ability to kind of really try hard here on that last boulder, because she was able to work through those other boulders so quickly. Just trying to set up a little better. Does have the heel hook, but flipping to a toe here. Oh, gonna have to prep. Just not able to get high enough on that hold. I honestly feel like the toe is kind of setting her up in a way that she can't get over enough there. But really great climbing in this round from Adrian Akiko, currently in 1st place. So setting herself up really nicely going into that lead round. Remember, everyone is trying to get into the final later on tonight, where the top 8 women from the bouldering and the lead rounds today will be in that position. There's another look at Adrian's family, her mom and her sister next to each other.
I mean, all
I'm
the
sure
family
pretty pleased with her
Absolutely.
performance.
All the families that come out here is always really great. Kyra Condi, seen on your screen now, is another one who is always at a competition with her parents, whether it's a World Cup or nationals or team trials. They travel with her a lot, and they also volunteer and help. And I know for Kyra in particular, Kyra's parents kind of act like everybody else's parents when they're traveling with the team.
They totally do. And let it be known that Kathy Condi makes some amazing chocolate chip banana bread. If you ever see her at a comp, she doesn't always make it, but
when
you
she
should
does,
always ask her if she did, because it is delicious.
But yeah, I mean, it's always really great when there's athletes out here that are supported by their family. And I mean, you know, Kyra's been doing this for a long time, and her parents are still here at this event and are super supportive of her, and that's always really great to see.
Both women up on the wall now. Kyra on her last boulder of the round, Kylie on her third, quickly through that coordination section. This, actually, that third boulder is we were talking about how it really suited Cece well earlier. This boulder is one that I would say, oh, this is a Kylie boulder.
Kyra kind of casually coming over into that volume and up into that 10 hold. We'll see if she likes this high heel.
And didn't even phase her, honestly. What a round for Kyra Condi. She's definitely really happy with that. It's really great to see an athlete like Kyra, who's been around for so long and has so many accolades. I mean, she's an Olympian. She's competed in so many World Cups. She's been in World Cup finals. And, you know, she doesn't always have an amazing round like that, and that's hard to watch. So to see her have such a good round and really be able to climb to her ability is always awesome to see.
I mean, and I think, especially for Kyra, I think it's been a really nice, as you said, this past year, she only competed in lead. She took some of the pressure off. It was a really, really hard year for her leading up to the Olympics. It was hard for all of our Olympians, a lot of pressure. The first time climbing had ever been seen on that stage. And I think that pressure was good practice for her for nationals. Nationals is a lot of stress and anxiety for these athletes, and I think having that leading up to the Olympics and working on that for herself really paid off for her, and we're seeing it here today.
Exactly. Kylie again back up into the more technical section, see if she can figure out what she wants to do here this time. Nice. Oh man, just losing the balance, kind of grabbing her fingers. Possibly the skin could be wearing down at this point because these athletes are on such textured holds and all brand new holds in isolation. I do love a brand new gym, but brand new holds are hard to climb on. Honestly, from our little session yesterday, my fingers look terrible. Like, I don't even understand how they could look that bad.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing this morning. I woke up and I was like, Mom, my skin hurts, and
yeah,
we're not even competing.
I know, that's kind of pathetic, but hey. Some people don't have the best skin, too. That could be it.
And sometimes watching, I get sweatier.
Yeah. It's hard to not be so involved in everybody else's climbing. Nicely through the coordination. She makes it look so easy. Just needs to really kind of bite down on this crimp.
And not panic about
Oof.
the scores or what's happening behind the scenes here.
She does have a lot of time, too. That's not like she's pressed for time at the moment, which is nice. So staying calm here. Going to try that match beta that we saw Annie do, but doesn't really seem to like it. I kind of feel like she wants to lift her foot up, but we saw Kate try it this way earlier. It didn't quite work, but Kylie might be able to make it happen, and she does. Nicely done. A top for Kylie Cullen. That's where her wingspan really comes into play there. She has a +5 on her 5'5" height, so really nice to be able to make that happen, and good use of staying calm there. That was, I mean, kind of nail bitey though. I'm like over here sweating.
And again, I mean, Kylie looks a little bit disheartened by that attempt and by that boulder, but earlier in the round we were not seeing a lot of top, so there's no need to panic yet.
Yeah, no need to panic. Another look at Kyra Condi's top on women's number 4. Great way to close out her round. And another look at Kylie's creative beta here for the top on women's number 3. Really nice to have a top there under her belt. But with one more boulder to go, which could definitely be another boulder she could do well on. Quick look at the women's number 2 boulder. We saw it was interesting. We saw some tops earlier in the round and then not as many in the middle. Another look at our leaderboard. So looking at Kyra Condi's score, it's really cool. She's 99.6. So because she did all 4 boulders, she's really close to that 100, but she didn't flash them all. She had some falls. So really nice to see her coming into that lead with a high score from the bouldering. Adrian, another high score, 79. Got Chloe Koskoy still up there, Annie Sanders. Mira Capicchione rounding out the 8th spot right now. So possibly in a good spot depending on how the rest of the round goes, because Annie and Kylie Annie's already in that top spot of the 8, and Kylie's not up there yet, so that'll depend if Mira stays in that 8th place spot right now.
And one thing that'll be really interesting as this round wraps up, Megan, those scores towards the bottom of the final cutoff are only 1 point difference between them, which really, leaves a lot to play for.
Yeah, it's a little interesting of a position to be in moving into that next round. Another reminder of how we're scoring here, with 25 points being the best score you can get on a boulder if you do it on your first try. Then you have the high zone of 10 points and the low zone of 5 points to start earning points within your score. Annie quickly moving through the lower section, looking very comfortable, really good with her toe hooks and heel hooks and hip positions.
And her body tension is always just so impressive. She does climb like a lead specialist, although she is obviously our current bouldering and lead national champion, so she's definitely good at both, but she does climb very patiently, and with a lot of intentionality and body position, for sure. Body tension, I should say. Taking her time on this hold. We've seen a lot of these athletes take the time to rest because this is a comfortable position and the next one is not.
Yeah, might as well take that time while you can. Though I do think she won't be so fazed by this heel hook. It just has to find that right position to get into it, which wasn't necessarily the best position yet, but she does have endurance for days, as we learned at Bouldering Nationals. I'm pretty sure she was on the boulders and finals for almost 5 minutes most of the time, so she's not going to get too zapped for energy.
And we see her really fighting with this heel hook, opting not to put her right foot on that yellow hold.
That. There we go.
She read my mind.
Just have to tell her about it. She definitely can't hear us.
We see that hip mobility there from Annie.
Just not wanting to use momentum. Again, she generally climbs very static, so this is a kind of move that I think if you just use a little momentum, it puts you in a better position, so maybe she'll make that adjustment on the next attempt.
She does still have 2.5 minutes left.
And she walked to the bottom section.
You can see her taking the time to brush those holds. She's brushing that lower pink hold to make sure that it's ready for her to rest on again if she ever needs it and gets up there. Again, she won't know the position that she's in right now. She's already in third place in the ranking. So she's second place now with that attempt in getting the high zone on this boulder because Adrian was not able to do that on her attempt on this boulder. But she won't know that she's in second place, so she'll be still wanting that top, still wanting to use this time well. And again, because of the way the scoring works, ranking doesn't really matter. So whether or not she's in second or first, she doesn't really care, but she would like those extra 15 points that she will get by topping this boulder out.
Well said.
And it will be interesting. I mean, as you can see, our leaderboard here with Kyra Condi in first place, Annie Sanders in second place, and Adriana Kiko in third. Those three athletes have, honestly, significantly higher scores than Chloe Koskoy in fourth. So those top three athletes will be in a much safer feeling position heading into that lead round because their scores are so high. Again, anything can happen. You still have to do well at lead. You still have to have a good lead climb, but you don't necessarily have ground to make up like some of the athletes that are farther down towards that current final cutoff, like Zoe Bitters, Sienna Kopp, and Mira Capicchione rounding it off in eighth.
Yeah, and Mira just sitting on that bubble spot right now for the bouldering round, but then has to go into the lead round and know that she really has to perform to move or to, solidify herself within that top 8 to hopefully be in the final later tonight.
And absolutely, and for somebody like Kate Hardy, who's just under that bubble cutoff, and Olivia Ma just below her, it leaves them with a good amount of hope, to be honest, that they, they're right there and they don't have to do much. And we see Annie Sanders chopping this boulder out anyway.
Just a little more power that time.
Doing it in her classic sort of static, patient style that she is very quickly becoming known for in the USA climbing scene. I think she'll be really happy with that round, and I think she'll honestly be really happy to have gotten that extra 15 points there at the end, just to keep her right up there with Kyra Condi.
Yeah, the more points you can have moving into that lead round, the better off you are. The more you can kind of relax, you still want to perform your best, but you don't have to be so worried about, getting to a certain point on the route. And obviously you never want mistakes to happen, but occasionally they can. But if you can go into it being like, cool, I'm just going to climb and enjoy the climbing and not worry about the scores because I'm already coming in a good position, that's way less stress to deal with.
Absolutely. And now we have our very last competitor, Kylie Cullen, on her very last boulder of the morning. And she's in a little bit of a different situation to Annie. She hasn't had the best round up until now compared to the other athletes that were at the top of our leaderboard yesterday. So she's going to want to make up as much ground as she can on this boulder, ideally get a top. But here we have our standings again. You can see Annie Sanders with that top moved right up next to Kyra Condi, only trailing her by 0.1, which is equal to 1 fall in our new format. Then we have Adriana Kiko, Chloe Koskoy, Helen Gillett, Zoe Bitters, Sienna Kopp, and Mira Capacchione with 43.9, closely followed by Kate Hardy by just 5 falls.
Yeah, it's interesting to see the scores play out that way, and it's cool to read them that way. I feel like it is so much easier, actually, so it's kind of nice to be able to have that. Kylie trying to figure out exactly how she wants to approach this boulder. Has a lot of time, but she definitely needs the points, and she knows that. Just if she's, paying attention to the points she has so far, the more. I think out of a bouldering round, you kind of want to be at least at 50 or above going into lead. That should be kind of the goal. Even if it is a round where people aren't only getting 50 points, if you have that goal, I feel like it puts you in a good position.
Absolutely, and it's almost easier with this format for these athletes to focus on themselves, because really it's all about gaining points. And obviously you want to be high up in the ranking, but that's not always what matters. And if it's a really tight bouldering round, a lot is to play for in lead, and the best you can do is just get as many of those zones and tops as possible and not really worry about what that equates to in the ranking.
Kylie looking like she's figuring it out now. Nice position to come into that match here. So if she can get a top here, that'll put her in a much nicer spot, and I believe should bump her up into that top 8. Nicely done under all that pressure. Has to feel relieved to walk away with a top. And yep, that puts her into 6th place with a 59.6. So not probably where she wanted to be out of this round, but again, above 50 points, which is good. And a great way to finish out the round. It is hard to come out last. She had a stellar performance in qualification, so not every round can be as perfect as you want. It's all about getting to the next round.
And if she is able to make the final, I think one thing that she can lean on is that, depending on the lead route, she maybe won't be coming out first, or won't be coming out last in the final, which will take that pressure off.
I think they keep the same running order for the whole day, so she will still come out.
No, for finals,
Oh,
though.
For finals. Yes, sorry.
So hopefully the next,
for lead. Wait a minute.
The next bouldering round she does, she potentially won't have the same.
But they do get a preview of the route for lead, so that's always nice, too. You're not coming out and not getting to see.
Absolutely.
So really great climbing from all of the women here in the semifinal round in the bouldering at 2023 USA Climbing National Team Trials, brought to you by YETI. And all in all, a really exciting round. Started the round with some tops here and there, but able to finish the round with 4 tops. That's so exciting. Multiple people getting 4 tops. I love when that happens, but nobody tied in that top spot position. So having that separation is great.
Yeah, and within our current top 8 athletes that are hoping to make it to the final round, there is a lot of difference in points, with Annie Sanders and Kyra Condi both pushing towards that 100-point value, and then the athletes that are sitting in 8th have really, really narrow margins and a narrow turnaround before their lead route.
Just one last look at that leaderboard. like you were just saying, Allison, Sienna Kopf in that 8th spot right now with that 44.4. Kyra Connie all the way at the top, 99.6. Annie Sanders right behind her, 99.5. And then we've got that middle section, Adrian Akiko, Chloe Koskoi, 79.68. So it's going to be an exciting lead round. These women are going to have to go out there, give it their all, and hopefully be able to stay in that top 8 to possibly get into the finals tonight.
It's going to be a great show, and these athletes are going to be, as we've said, are going to be tired today. They're going to be only getting more tired, and they have a very short amount of rest right now before they have to go right back into isolation. And I was going to say re-warm up, but they probably won't do much.
Depending on who you are when you come out in the round. But anyway, thanks everyone for joining us. Please come back in an hour. Check out our YouTube channel so that you can figure out the link for that lead semifinal, and we'll be back in an hour. So please join us, and we'll see what happens, who's going to be in the final.
You have to fail multiple times to find the right way. But once you find that right flow, and you're gonna be more successful.
Resilience is kind of understanding that like bad things will happen and that like you can turn those into opportunities to grow and become a stronger person.
When I was young, I was one of the only women in climbing. I was the kid at the gym climbing with all the older dudes. I think for me, it was sort of like a proving ground.
I've had those struggles too, that people have been upset that there's been a black person in their gym. And I'm resilient because I don't let it stop me.
Adversity teaches you to fail properly. And if you're not willing to accept failure, then you're never going to learn to grow.
Bro, whatever you can throw at me, like, you're not going to take me away from what I want to do. You can't stop me.
Whether you're alpine climbing or cragging after work, Gnarly Nutrition is here to help you push your possible.
Travel doesn't have to be this super exotic international thing. It can really be out of your own backyard. The high desert is so three-dimensional. It's so big that there is no way you could ever see everything here. The orange and brown and yellow, it's just so endless. Whether it's something I've done before or something brand new, there's so much to explore just right here.
So yeah, we've been testing out the new catch and hold system from the TruBlue IQ Plus. And with the IQ Plus, you know, you're just able to stop there, rest, shake out, try to figure out the moves, and yeah, really excited to have this new device in our gym. It's going to just really help us to continue growing the sport.
Since 1966, we have viewed walls not as obstacles, but as opportunities. From the big walls of Yosemite to the high peaks of the Himalaya, we were searching for a personal kind of freedom. In this pursuit, we found a community, strengthened by different stories, experiences, and perspectives. This community has shown us that the only way forward is together.